International Conference on Learning Diversity 2020. It's a wonderful day, and I hope it stays blessed for all of us. As the first speaker at the inaugural session of the conference, I invite Chairperson Emeritus of Manovikas Kendra and Chairperson of the conference, Dr. Sharda Fatehpuria, to take the center stage, please, the presenter screen, and give her address to all of us. Thank you, ma'am.
It is with great joy and a sense of humility I welcome all eminent speakers of international fame and all respected delegates and participants to this webinar of International Conference on Learning Diversity 2020. The humility arises from the fact that from the time Manochetna, a wing of Manovikas, started working in the year 2012, and in a short span of 8 years have touched the lives of vulnerable section of our society, children with learning difficulties. Researchers have looked for resolutions of learning difficulties and associated emotional needs of this vulnerable group of children. Today, we have a to learn from research and the combined experience of all eminent speakers and learned delegates. I'm certain that at the end of the conference, we will come away empowered. Now, I hand over for further proceedings to Dr. Arundhati Sarkar, Director of Manochetna Academic and Research Center. Thanking you. Thank you very much. Thank you again. Welcome. Again, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I pass on the representative of the former head of the Department of Education, Professor Debashri Banerjee, to give her address. She will also read out the address of our patron, Chief Patron, Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University, Professor Shonali Chakraborty. Madam, please take the intro.
Thank you, Dr. Sarkar. Good morning and a warm welcome on behalf of the Department of Education, Calcutta University, to all our resource persons and also the participants. Before I start, I would just like to read out why I was not able to be a part of the webinar because of some urgent duty that was not right now. Reading out from her message. Good morning. Though I could not be present virtually at today's International Conference on Learning Diversity due to some urgent administrative responsibilities, I extend my warm welcome to all resource persons and participants on behalf of the University of Calcutta. We are passing through a massive planetary crisis. Yet, knowledge sharing and exchange of ideas cannot come to a halt. Especially in times of crisis like this, the importance of achieving inclusivity and diversity in education becomes increasingly poignant. Manochetna Academic and Research Center has taken very important steps in nurturing and promoting this ethos of diversity in the education of children. It gives me immense pleasure to see that the Department of Education of my university has joined hands with Manochetna. This collaborative effort will surely help disseminate awareness among teachers, students, and broader public about educational diversity. I am certain that this international webinar will greatly enrich the participants and nourish their pathways of thinking. I wish this webinar a grand success. Continuing on her lines, I also do believe when we are trying to bring about an inclusiveness in society and education, this webinar is going to enrich our students and the participants and make the world a better place to be, accepting students with diverse needs and their diverse learning abilities. Thank you. I would like to hand over the responsibility now to Dr. Sharkar. Yourself on the
Present.
Okay. Okay. Continue.
Please unmute. A
Okay.
very good morning. Shall I continue, Mr. Shah?
Yes, continue. Continue. Please.
I can see you in the presenter place. Okay. A very good morning. A very good morning to all of you. On behalf of the organizing committee of International Conference on Learning Diversity 2020 and Manochetna Academic and Research Center, we extend our gratitude to those who showed us light to walk on in these extraordinary times. Our chairperson emeritus has been a tower of strength. Support of governing body of the Institute has been unfailing. Gratitude is extended to our chief patron, Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University, Professor Shonali Chakraborty, Head of the Department of Education, Professor Kutubuddin Haldar, and former Head of the Department of Education, Professor Debashri Banerjee. Our advisory committee's support and guidance at every step gave us courage. Tireless work of our working committee members who made this conference see the light of the day deserves special mention. These extraordinary challenging times have often made us feel restricted, but courage and strength from all our participants helped us to persevere. An outstanding personality of all times, Maya Angelou, wrote a beautiful dedication for her book, I Know Why the Caged Birds Sings. To all the strong birds of promise who defy the odds and sing their songs. Madam, sir, those of you who are here today defying all odds, we dedicate this conference to you. Now I would like to give an introduction of the mentors of the Institute. First speaker is Professor Richard Rose. First, we would like to say a little bit on Professor Rose. Please allow me to introduce Professor Rose. Professor Richard Rose is the Professor of Emeritus in Inclusive Education at the University of Northampton, UK. He has previously held posts as teacher, School of Principal, and inspector in several parts of UK. Professor Rose has worked regularly in India since 2000 as a teacher, consultant, and researcher. He has conducted research for national governments in many parts of the world, including Malta, Armenia, Georgia, Ireland, and NGOs and other organizations, including UNICEF, Site Savers, and the Commonwealth Commission. He has published more than 100 academic papers and is the author of 12 books related to special and inclusive education. Professor Rose, please take the presentation screen, please. I request host to put Professor Rose as a presenter.
I request to all participants during this lecture, please don't unmute yourself because I am sharing a PPT. So don't unmute. This is very difficult.
This is not Professor Rose's address. Please let him say a word of just say hello, and then we'll pass on to Professor Nilanjana Sanyan. Please allow Professor Rose to say a word of greeting.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today with colleagues, both colleagues who I've known very well for many years in India, some who I've had the privilege of working with very closely, including colleagues there in Calcutta, and to make contact with new people there as well. I'd first of all like to just commend the organising committee for managing to get this conference organised and up and running in these very, very difficult times. And I look forward to speaking to all of you a little later on as well. So thank you very much for the welcome and good luck to everybody with the conference. Thank you.
Opening address a little later. Now I would like to introduce Professor Nilanjana Sanyal. Professor Dr. Nilanjana Sanyal is currently a retired professor and a former head of the departments of psychology, University of Calcutta. She's also practicing psychoanalysis for 37 years. She received Jubilee and Jawaharlal Award along with Basu from Indian Society of Research. She is a recipient of Professor Maya Award, Society apart from awards.
I think she left, I think. Madam, you are here? Professor Sanla? No, ma'am.
Maybe some
Mr. Shah, please allow others to share the screen. We can only see you. I'll pass on to Professor Jayanti Narayan then. I request Mr. Shah to pass on the screen to Professor Jayanti Narayan.
Okay.
Professor Jayanti, I will please share the presenter's role to let her at least see, let us see her. Professor Jayanti Narayan. Professor Jayanti Narayan is a special educator and currently a visiting professor at the University of Northampton, UK. Sir, I'll have to stop now. We can only see you.
Okay.
Mr. Shah, please put others on the screen.
I believe you have pinned Mr. Shah. That is why you can see him just. I think you have pinned him. We can see the others
I
also.
turn off my video and just...
Introduction of Professor Jayanti Narayan. Professor Jayanti Narayan is a special educator, currently a visiting professor at the University of Northampton, UK. She has retired as Deputy Director of the National in the State University of New York, USA, specializing in education, University of New York, USA, specializing in mental retardation. She holds another in education and PhD. She received Fulbright Senior Research Fellowship from postdoctoral program at Boston College, Massachusetts, USA. She was awarded honorary doctorate by University of Northampton in 2018. Dr. Narayan has been a consultant in special education in countries including Indonesia, Maldives, China, Bhutan, Cambodia, and hired by UNICEF, UNDP, WHO, and international agencies. She has numerous research publications in national and international journals of repute. Ma'am, please say a few words addressing the delegates.
Good morning, everybody. Namaskar. I am very pleased to be among you. This conference has seen a lot of hurdles and because of the pandemic, and Arundhati has made it possible that we are all meeting today, and I see that a large number of you have registered, and I hope the coming 2 days are going to be good days for all of us in terms of knowing more about diversity in learning. Thank you for the opportunity to join you all. Thank you. Namaskar.
Now I welcome Professor Debashri Banerjee to start off the plenary session 1 and give an introduction to the chair, Professor Anutima Banerjee.
Thank you, Dr. Sarkar. We are going to start off with our first plenary session, which will be chaired by Dr. Anutima Banerjee. I would just like to say a few words about Anutima Banerjee. The people out here know her pretty well, but since this is an international conference, a few words about her. She is a consultant psychologist, an academic mentor, and a proctor columnist. She is attached to super specialty hospital and also associated with various academic institutions of repute. Her literary skills are also highly acclaimed in the field of contemporary Bengali literature. Dr. Banerjee will be chairing the session, which will be presided by Professor Rukshana Sholapoorwala and Dr. Jamet. A few lines about Rukshana, madam. She is a special educator by profession and has gained the experience in the field of special education for almost 3.5 decades. She is registered with the Rehabilitation Council of India. She, along with Dr. Karni, were the pioneers in setting up the first learning disability clinic in Mumbai at Sion Hospital. She worked there for 14 years and now disability clinic in the Department of Pediatrics, St. G.S. Medical College and KEM Hospital, Parel, Mumbai. She runs a private clinic for children with special needs. She is the course coordinator for the postgraduate diploma in special education at SIES College, Sion, Mumbai. In September 2016, she was invited by the Institute of Neurodevelopmental Disorders, Sweden, to represent India on the Consensus Conference on ADHD. Rukshana madam, along with Tata Class Edge, has created an online course on learning disability, which is on the YouTube. Now coming to Dr. Johnson Jamet. Dr. Jamet is a professor at the School of Education for Bangalore-based course run by the University of Northampton, UK. He works with various reputed NGOs. He has numerous national and international. He has written in numerous national and international journals. Now, I would like to hand over the charge to Dr. Anutima Banerjee.
Thank you so much. I would like to congratulate the entire academic team of the Calcutta University Education Department and this collaborative effort, which couldn't have been possible, I'm sure, without Dr. Arundhati Sarkar and Manochetna. So my congratulations to this entire teamwork. And we are together in spite of our demographic diversities this morning. So I think it is already an environment where we can see that it's possible to come together irrespective of all the challenges that we have to face at this point during pandemic, during lockdown, and the rest of the other issues that we are facing at this time. So I would not take up much of time. I'm actually eager to listen to our esteemed speakers for this particular panel. Very quickly, from my own experience, what I have gathered so far, so I would just quickly touch upon certain areas which I am eager to learn from these sessions and this excellent international webinar. I think when we talk about diversity, when we talk about inclusivity, we have certain challenges definitely as a teaching person or as a mentor or as an faculty person. In one hand, we would like to balance certain factors in the classrooms following the uniformity, because we have to go by the lesson plan, we have to go by a certain syllabi, we have to create a certain structure for the whole classroom. On the other hand, we have to accept that each student would come from various abilities, various interests, various identities, from various cultures. They could be different, and difference is not necessarily a disqualification. The moment we are looking at the students in the classroom, I think we as teachers, every time we have to remind ourselves that when we create a tentative structure, it is tentative. we can presume that, okay, this topic may take 3 classes, but we never know unless we start the journey. And while interacting with our students, while being in the classroom, there are certain infrastructural challenges, like we have to complete a certain portion within a certain period. And there are certain intrapsychic challenges that comes from us. I'm far more interested in that introspective process, and I'm sure in this webinar we would hear more about that. Within us, I mean, from our own self, at times the resistance comes. We are far more comfortable with people who are alike, who are like us, who are similar. Whenever we see somebody who's different in any capacity, we have difficulty in integrating those differences. That difficulty may stem from lack of knowledge. Maybe we do not know what to do with them. Maybe we do not know how to go about them. And sometimes our lack of knowledge leads to, pardon me, sometimes we become aggressive because we do not know how else can we deal with it. And we may not be completely aware of it. We may not really understand that this aggression is actually coming from lack of understanding. So I believe this is important for us to reflect on our own internal cues when we are dealing with diversities. When we talk about diversity, I also believe that it is important to respect the diversity, to create a safe, non-judgmental space in the classroom, because when somebody achieves, it is not about the ability only. If we all, look back and think about our own academic days, the classes we enjoyed the most, the teachers we used to like the most, many of us have taken up those subjects because teachers have a major role to play in influencing the future course of our academic work. I'm very fortunate to share this platform with Dr. Nilanjana Sanyal. Nilanjana ma'am has been my mentor. I have learned a lot from ma'am, and it is my honor to be here when she's also present. I remember even in our academic days, we used to learn certain subject in such a wonderful way from certain mentors that we thought this should be our area of concern. This is where I would like to, proceed, because our mentors have motivated us to be who we are today. So I think we also have to kind of create that environment when we are dealing with students, when we are dealing with particularly younger minds, and we are part of their formative days. We have a huge responsibility there. We should not reduce the diversity. I think that is something I have always, thought about while dealing with students in my own work field. We should rather try to respect the diversity and integrate them. The diversity may stem from ability, interest, their attention span, their memorization capacity. It could be cognitive, it could be cultural, it could be diversity stemming from their gender sexuality, their identities, their identity positions. We should be respectful. We should try and understand from where the student comes, because unless I'm sensitive towards this child, unless I'm sensitive towards the student, my other students, the peers of that particular student, would not learn that language. We have a huge role to play to even stop the bullying behavior in the academics, and even there, management plays a very, very, very important role. I have seen that we learn from our teachers that how we should behave with our fellow peer, with our classmates. So I think these are the areas I would be intrigued to learn from this session. I would not take up much of your time. I'm myself interested to learn from Professor Rukshana Sholapoorwala and Dr. Johnson Jamant. I would like to learn from you all, and my congratulations once again to all the organizing committee members, and I'm thankful to be a part of it. I'm much honored. Thank you so much.
Yes, madam.
Yes. Anutima ma'am, would you kindly invite the first speaker of your session?
Yeah. The first speaker is Professor Rukshana Sholapoorwala. So I would invite you, ma'am, to present your topic today. Can we have the presenter, please? Professor Rukshana Sholapoorwala.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. On the onset, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
On the onset, I would like to thank Manochetna and the Education Department of the University of Calcutta to call me for this grand conference. Well, today the topic is diversity in learning. What is diversity? Diversity is a fact. Inclusion is an act. In diversity, in a classroom, it's understanding each student who brings unique experiences, strength, and ideas. Diversity is the exploration and incorporation of these differences, and these differences can be of caste, socioeconomic status, gender, abilities, and disabilities. Inclusion over here, well, we have the right to education now, and it states that all children under the age group of 6 to 14 have got the right to educate. It's on the basis of equality. Primary education is compulsory. Secondary education is also compulsory. And how to bring down the dropouts of the school. Well, according to Robert Meehan, every child has a different learning style and pace. Each child is unique, not only capable of learning, but also capable of succeeding. It's a very huge thing. Now, I would like to say that in the new Person with Disability Act of 2016, the government from 7 categories has made it into 21 categories. And they have also defined what is disability. It's a continuing condition that restricts everyday activities. Well, the Disability Service Act of 1993 defines disability, which is attributable to an intellectual, psychiatric, cognitive, neurological, sensory, or physical impairment, or a combination of all those possibles. Now, they have included all the types of disabilities. The census of 2011 tells us that 34.7% school-going children are disabled from the age group of 10 to 19. I would like to give you one example. Suppose you are invited by a friend, a very close friend, to a party. And all of a sudden, a very close cousin of yours has dropped in and who is going to stay with you overnight. Now you are in a dilemma. What will you do? Of course, you will ring up the host and say, look, this has happened. Can I bring my cousin along with me? And she is going to say, definitely bring her back. Bring her. There is no problem. Your cousin has been included, but has she been integrated? The host will speak to her, but will the other guests who do not know her, will they participate with her? So when we are talking about inclusion, we need to first see to the needs of the child. We also need to see and focus on the needs of the teachers. Now, needs of the teachers, I mean, are our teachers trained to help these children in the regular classroom? Do they even know what these disabilities are which have been included? Or we are just trying to include children in the big classrooms of normal education that we have? I don't call them big classrooms, I call them overcrowded classrooms, where children are 60 in a class with one teacher predominantly talking. So we need to first handle the teacher training. We also need to see the infrastructure of the schools, and by infrastructure I don't mean only by building ramps and lifts for the physically handicapped, but also the curriculum. Are our children, the disabled children, able to cope up with the vast curriculum that we are having these days? And if the child has to adapt to all these new policies and to the system, we first need to humanize education. By humanizing, I mean the child should be treated with equality. It should have the sense of belonging. I should not be labeled and I should not be put away that, oh, you can't do it. Because then the feeling of belonging doesn't come. You need to respect each other's You need to respect each other's feeling. You need to respect each other's abilities. And the education has to be need-based. To have all this, there are certain principles of teaching for inclusive education, and that is, we all need to understand that all children are special and no one is ineducable. Lots of involvement and commitment is required from the part of the teachers. You have to keep the interest of the child first. You need to teach in small portions. And you should emphasize more on accuracy and understanding rather than the speed and the memory. So the three main factors for inclusions are the infrastructure, the teacher training, and the evaluation system. Just putting them together, I don't know whether we are doing it right. But yes, we have made a step further by at least putting them in a regular school and not asking them to leave the school. I would like to end here by saying today's children are tomorrow's leaders, and it is our responsibility to see how they function. Thank you.
Hello, am I audible? Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Sholapoorwala. This was a lovely session, and I think this need-based approach to enable the environment is extremely important in intervention. I would now like to call Dr. Johnson Jamint for his session. Is he there with us? Can we have him as a presenter?
Could
Dr.
Johnson, could Dr. Jamint?
Dr. Johnson Jamint, yes, I can see him. Yeah. I would like to welcome you, sir, for your session now. Yeah, can we have him as presenter, please? Thank you.
Constant. Nameটা পাচ্ছি না। দেবশ্রী ম্যাম।
No,
Mr.
I can't
Jamint,
see Dr.
Jamint Johnson. Mr. Jamint.
Spelling?
Mr. Johnson Jament.
Jament.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Just.
Please put him on the presenter screen.
Please turn on video, please.
His video has to be on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can
Okay,
hear you,
good.
but we can't see you right now, sir.
I think there may be a network issue here. Is that okay if I speak now?
Sure, sir. Sure.
Okay. Okay, so this session, I'm going to talk about how diverse learners, what we can do to support them through differentiated teaching and learning. So this is what I'm going to talk about. In a diverse classroom, there are children with different learning levels. We know that all children do not learn the same level, and all children will not have same understanding, and some children are very good in some subjects, some other children are very good in some other subjects. Some children may need more kind of emotional support, social support. And so in a diverse classroom, all these children with different needs are presented. So in this COVID situation, we also have another category of when we provide education in this COVID-19 situation, we have to consider some other factors. So, for example, now the whole learning actually happening in remote areas. I mean, remote learning is happening. So what happening now, for example, even in Kerala also, the state government has introduced this education for everybody from education is happening remotely. So, but we are not sure whether all children have the access to the for example, computers and tablets and online portals, virtual lesson facilities, or radio and TV sets, we are not sure. So, for example, if I am talking about coastal community also, I can see that not all children have all these resources. At the same time, even if they have these resources, their environment may not be
The maximum.
I believe he's having some problem in the line. Dr. Jack, we can't hear you.
Professor Banerjee, Anutima Banerjee, please take over.
Issues are not considered.
Yeah.
The other would be limited internet access hinders learning even further. So there is a lack of other additional support and care. So this is the situation now. So the pandemic situation actually aggravated some communities' education in a bit more kind of destructive way. So at the same time, other children are having education, but these children are not able to have this education. So that is there. So here I am going to talk a little bit about Porter's comparison of tradition and inclusionary approach. So according to him, in a traditional approach, we may focus more on students, so the individual students, rather than a classroom. So for example, an inclusive approach actually focuses on classroom. So we are trying to fit the children in that classroom. So we make arrangements like the previous speaker actually mentioned about infrastructure and teachers, how teachers actually model herself or himself to accept that child or involve that child in learning. So in inclusive approach, we are focusing more on classroom rather than more on students in a traditional way. Then traditional way, we also focus on the assessment of student by a specialist. Often this specialist actually come from outside the school system. So for example, a psychologist or a therapist. So these kind of specialists do the assessment. But in an inclusive approach, we examine the teaching learning factors. So for example, how children learn. What are the factors actually hinder the children's participation in learning? These factors we focus more in an inclusive approach. In traditional approach, we also focus on diagnostic or prescriptive outcomes, more often like a checklist. So you do this, you do that, then the child will be doing better. So these kind of prescriptive instructions are coming. But in an inclusive approach, we focus more on collaborative problem solving. So that means the children and the teachers and work together to learn something. In traditional approach, we focus on student programs. So meaning that we are trying to make a system which is good for the child, or maybe we are focusing more on the student centered. But here in inclusive approach, that student centered is very important, but at the same time, we are providing more training, more professional development programs for teachers to develop teacher development programs. So here the teachers' strategies, what they do in the classroom for that particular child is very important. So again, in traditional approach, we focus more on placement in an appropriate program. For example, we may say, oh, this kind of program is actually exclusively for this type of child. Therefore, this is not conducive for the other children. But in an inclusive approach, we adapt and we develop a kind of supportive regular classroom environment for the children. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yes.
Professor Anutima Banerjee, please.
Yes,
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir. Yes,
okay,
yes.
okay, thank you. So I get a call from Professor Jendi, that's why I'm asking whether he can hear me or not.
Yeah, you're clearly audible, sir.
Yes, so now again we need to think about the COVID-19 situation again. So where we have to focus, we have traditional approach, we have inclusionary approach, just I mentioned. So in this COVID-19 situation, what kind of learning we should focus? So I have made some points here. So the point one is focus on distance learning accessible. So distance learning accessible for everybody. So when we talk about everybody, we also need to think about the factors I mentioned earlier. So the people who may have difficulties to access these online materials. And we also need to examine online platforms and other essential services. So as I mentioned earlier, other essential services also including the environment. So whether the food available for them, whether psychological support available for them, whether the house situation or community situation actually good for to have these online learning platforms, that we need to examine. So what's happening currently here in classrooms, I mean, in the online platforms the teachers are doing here in Kerala, they do sessions which is teacher-led, then ask the students to do some activities based on half an hour teacher-led materials. Then they send back to the teachers and teacher assess. That's what happening. So, but the problem with this that, so who will monitor what the child is doing? What about if the parents are not able to support that child to have that learning engagement when the child is asked to do independently? because we need to keep our social distancing and etc. So it may continue for some time. So what I suggest is what we need is a kind of community-led education programs, because we may need to think about whether the community is able to support that kind of learning for them. So we need to identify the people who are able to provide support those children who are finding difficulties to access this online teaching materials. So therefore, I suggest it is also, we say that inclusive setup is the strategies for teachers. Here I say we need strategies for community. So meaning we need to equip the community to access this learning and make learning relevant to their community needs. Especially this has particularly become important in pandemic situations. Therefore, I also advise or suggest we need to have this adaptive and supportive regular online programs, as well as we need to have a kind of development of physical environment which is available for them. So for example, when you think about the noisy environment, so can we reduce the noisy environment? In order to have this, you need to educate the community. So this is where I think we need to move forward in a COVID-19 pandemic situation. So I have two more aspects to say, then I can stop. So people, when we talk about diversity or learning diversity or diverse classroom, we often talk about differentiation. So what we say, differentiation means diversity. So differentiation is a process where the teachers actually prepare themselves. That is why we need more teacher training, like previous speaker mentioned. We equip teachers to meet the need of the child. And so what we are trying to do is we are trying to develop an inclusive or progressive society through a curriculum we set. Then we choose appropriate teaching methods to match an individual child's learning strategies or learning styles, most often within a group situation. So what differentiators do, they do 5 things. They do variety of programs. So they do change their approach towards student, approach towards the classroom. They prepare different learning programs or learning activities for different children. They often accredit children's ability rather than focus on children's deficits. They also accredit or recognize children's efforts they make to understand something. Therefore, it involves a lot of learning and understanding. Then also we evaluate their efforts they made in order to have this value added to the quality of teaching and learning. So this is the way we forward: variety, accreditation, learning and understanding, and evaluation. This way we make our teaching learning which more quality, and also have a kind of inclusive classroom as well as an inclusive society. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anand. This is a wonderful session, and what I really appreciated in your session that you talked about the existing situation. You know, you are talking about the existing COVID situation, and while imparting online lessons, how we can be extra careful about being sensitive to the diversities. You have wonderfully incorporated that part. And I think maybe in our next other sessions, I mean, we would end this session here. This is the first plenary session, which would end with Dr. Jaman's a wonderful speech. And I would also like to thank once again Professor Rukshana Sholapoorwala, because this session gives us at least the basic premise from where the whole webinar can take off. And I believe in the other sessions, we would also learn that at this point, when online classrooms are the only available option, where the classrooms are visiting the students, how can we be extra careful, extra sensitive to those who are otherwise silent in the classrooms, who are otherwise invisible even in the regular classrooms? So I think maybe the most silent, the most shy, the most comparatively the person who's otherwise, behind the backdrop, how can we identify them? How can we be next to them emotionally? Yes, physical distance is there, but social distance is not something that we are looking for. So how can we be socially more inclusive in this today's time? I think maybe that is something that we can learn from the other session. I would once again thank Dr. Arundhati and Dr. Banerjee, Calcutta University Education Department, and Manochetna for having us all together here. We are learning a lot in this diverse environment. Thank you once again. I would end this plenary session with this note. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee, Professor Rukshana Sholapoorwala, and Dr. Johnson Jamint. Thank you for the wonderful session. Lots of things to learn from here in this special, extraordinary time. We needed all these lessons that the lesson that we took from this session was excellent, and thank you so much. With that, with permission from Professor Dept Banerjee, I'll proceed to the invited speaker session in education. The three chairs for chairpersons for this sessions are Professor Richard Rose, Professor Jayanti Narayan, and Professor Rukshana Sholapoorwala. Madams and sir, I request you to take the to switch on your mic and videos, and we welcome Professor Rose, Professor Richard Rose, to give his opening address to the delegates present here today on the platform.
Thank you very much. It's very good to be here with you all today and to have an opportunity to share some thoughts at what is a very difficult time for all of us. And I was asked to say something about pedagogy for the 21st century. And in some ways, our current pandemic situation has made us think quite deeply about what we mean by pedagogy today and how we are able to actually maintain any kind of education system under very trying circumstances. So I wanted to talk really about some kind of reflective comments on where we are in terms of our understanding of this term inclusion at the moment, and maybe a little about what we're learning through this current crisis. I think if we're going to talk about pedagogy of any kind, whether it's for the 20th century or the 21st century or whenever, we need to start by thinking about diversity. Diversity is not just about disability in terms of those of us who are concerned for inclusion. It's much wider than that. And if this COVID crisis has shown one thing to us, it is that we still have many people in our society who are discriminated, people who are on the margins of our society. If we look at the figures internationally for people who suffered under this pandemic, there's a disproportionate number of people from marginalized groups, people from poorer communities, the elderly, people from ethnic minorities in my own country are far more at risk than the majority white population here. Diversity is something which is coming very much to the forefront at the moment. And we need to educate ourselves far more about the difficulties that some of our communities face living in a multicultural society. We need also to consider what this word respect means. Unfortunately, in many instances, it means paying lip service. It means expressing our concern. But we've been expressing our concerns for people who have been marginalized, whether through disability or through gender, through sexuality, through caste or tribal status, for many, many years now. We've had successive legislation. We've had successive international agreements, from the Salamanca Statement, for instance, which, you know, when you consider how long ago that was, 1994, a tremendous time ago, and yet we seem to have made stuttering progress towards any kind of truly inclusive society. So this notion of respect for diversity is the first point that I would actually emphasize. Respect isn't just about benevolence. Respect is about recognizing the value that people have to make to our society, that everybody can contribute. The great Indian economist Amartya Sen, along with the American colleague Martha Nussbaum, in their call for social justice through what they call a capability approach, have emphasized that we need to be looking at the capacity of each individual and to recognize that everybody has something to contribute to our society and nobody should be valued any less than anybody else. I think we also think about this term of learning as well. We've been quite good, I think, in recent years as educators at looking at issues of access and listening to colleagues already this morning. And my colleague, Dr. Johnson-Jament, has actually mentioned issues such as differentiated instruction, planning for individual needs. And we've become quite effective at this in many instances. However, the thing that we have actually forgotten to address is what the purpose of our education actually is. Holistic learning means that we don't just teach children academic subjects, we don't just teach them to jump through the hoops of our examination system, but we teach them what it is to be a member of a community and a member of society. This is being brought home to us at the moment very, very strongly, certainly in my own country, where we are actually recognizing some of the skills that people weren't taught at school, but have learned through their families and have learned through the kind of societies that they live in. They are making an enormous contribution to the social well-being and the fabric of our society. This relates to this point of elitism. I see this in India as much as I do in my own country, in fact, possibly even more. We've created a system where we believe we know what the education system should be creating high-achieving academic individuals, creating people who are going to be the leaders in our society. And there's nothing wrong with competition. I have no objection to that. And I have certainly no objection to people achieving academic excellence. Those of us who work in universities are dependent upon those who strive for academic excellence. But actually, when this has come to a point of devaluing other kinds of learning and other kinds of skills, we're in danger of fragmenting our society. For example, I come into contact, when I'm in India, I come into contact every day with auto rickshaw drivers. I put my life in their hands, sometimes quite literally, and sometimes feeling a little unsafe, I'll admit. But actually, I come into contact with these people every day. They provide a service which is absolutely critical. If, for instance, all the auto rickshaw drivers went on strike, Bangalore would grind to a halt. And some days I think that might be a good thing, actually. So, you know, but the auto rickshaw drivers that I've traveled with, it's good to get into conversation with them quite often. Many of them are far more educated than you think. They know things that you and I can only just imagine. I depend upon these people. And yet, in the eyes of the Indian education system or in the eyes of the international world, these are not seen as educated people. They are at the bottom end of the hierarchy of values that we place on individuals in our society. And for me, that is a tragedy. I hope it never happens, but if all the brain surgeons in Bangalore go on strike tomorrow, a few people tragically will suffer greatly. But if all the auto rickshaw drivers go on strike, as I say, the place will grind to a halt. And yet we value one person far more than we do the other. What I suggest we're valuing is not the person, but the qualifications that they have, their education. And that's not what I came into education for. I came into education believing that it was a great leveler. It provides people with opportunities. It provides them with a chance to contribute to society and to make a valid contribution to the communities in which they live. But we also need to encourage collaboration. We need to encourage collaboration between all partners who have a vested interest in improving our society. So that means that as teachers, for instance, we have to engage much more with the communities that we purport to support. We actually have to try and understand what the lives of these people who we're concerned about are. I was principal of a school for a number of years, and I remember very well saying to some of my teachers, we're in a very privileged position. We teach children, many of whom have difficulties. You know, I teach a child with cerebral palsy, but at the end of the day, I go home and I go back to my family and I don't have the pressures and strains that the family with this child have. Let's try and understand the kind of situations that these people are living in. I want to go back to the current crisis and just finish in a few minutes with some reflection on what this has shown us about the notion of inclusion. Along with my colleague, Professor Janti Narayan, who's with us today, I've been recently working with a team of young researchers across several of the Commonwealth countries, so countries in Africa, and a colleague from the northeast of India. And they've been looking at the impact of COVID upon specific communities. So, for instance, the young lady researcher in India has been looking at the impact upon the children of migrant workers who've been returning to the north of India from metropolitan cities, returning to their villages, as you know, has been happening all across India. One of the things that all of these people have demonstrated, all these young researchers, whether they're in Ghana or Kenya or in India, they have actually demonstrated the great gaps of opportunity that exist for our learners in society. Every one of them has spoken about the innovation that has come from the COVID crisis. So, for instance, in some African countries, the dedication of television channels to provide learning opportunities for children who can't attend school in the crisis, programs aimed at specific age groups. Schools across the world have been putting vast amounts of material online to support learners while they can't be in school. Teachers have worked really hard to develop new materials. They're there online, they're being accessed on mobile phones, on tablets, on computers, and children are benefiting. But who is benefiting? The evidence we're getting from these young researchers is that this environment has actually identified the great chaos that exists in the digital world. Many of these young people do not have access to computers. They can't access digital technology. They are being excluded and they're falling even further behind. So when we talk about pedagogy of the 20th century, and some of my colleagues say, oh, we're now in the digital age. People are learning more from digital technology. You know, libraries, for instance, are not buying books. They're putting everything online. Everybody is benefiting from this, they say. It's a democratic process. The internet is free and democratic, and we have big debates about whether there should be censorship on the internet, whether there should be restrictions on companies like Google, for instance. But we've forgotten that for a significant number of people in the world, access to this technology doesn't exist. It's beyond their remit. And even some of those who can access the technology do not have the abilities or the opportunities to actually access things in the way that I'm doing at the moment. I can see, for instance, at the moment in front of me on the screen, a copy of the slide which I've presented to you. I can read it, I can access that. But of course, there are many people who might have this technology for whom this means very, very little. We have a real crisis at the moment in terms of this pandemic. But I would suggest to you that one of the things that this crisis is doing for us is showing us that when we talk about pedagogy for the 20th century, we need to talk about pedagogy for everyone. At the moment, we're continuing to exclude people because of our lack of respect for their diversity, because we do not respect the holistic aspects of learning, which includes community engagement, social needs, because we're pandering to those of, including myself, and I would suggest most of you, who we would describe as the elite, who have these opportunities to engage in this way. And we're not being really collaborative at the moment. We've become quite selfish in the way that we're addressing this crisis. So every teacher a teacher to inclusion, but that actually means that we have to become inclusive in terms of our teaching approaches, as well as just the lip service we pay to those who we think actually need our expertise. So I hope I've given you a few things to think about there, and look forward to hearing what the other speakers in this section have to say. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Rose. Now, I'm sorry, Mr. Bernstein, after the wonderful lecture delivered by Professor Rose, for which we have to thank him, we have Mr. Robert J. Bernstein. So we are sorry, we've encroached on your time a little bit, but we are extremely thankful for the lecture delivered by Professor Rose, and we're looking forward to yours. Mr. Robert J. Bernstein has been treating children on the autism spectrum for more than 30 years. He shepherded his son, who is on the spectrum, through college and graduate school onto a successful career in computer electronics. He consults for numerous organizations, including National Council on Alcoholism and other drug dependencies, and was publicly acclaimed for pioneering table tennis as a means to facilitate social interaction among young people with autism. His work with previously nonverbal child, whom he helped learn to speak, was documented in New York Times. He has appeared on Dateline NBC, National Radio, Educating Your Child, a call-in radio show, and conducted dozens of seminars and presentations, including first responders and individuals with autism, averting crisis and presenting disastrous consequences. The first conference of this kind in Winchester. He received the graduate training at Teachers Training College, Columbia University, and lives in New York. So the presenter screen is now to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. And I'm glad I represent part of the diversity in this group. And I really want to gear my remarks to teachers and parents. I guess we're all teachers, right? Because teachers and parents are really have the most effect on our kids. And what's been remarkable for me with this COVID crisis, like Professor Rose was saying, the benefits of COVID, is that when I'm working through Zoom or, whatever you have with WebEx, when I'm working through Zoom and I'm working with the teacher or a parent with the child, I'm instructing that parent in my method to work with the child. I'm working through the parent to work through the child. The parent is empowered with the method that I'm using, and whether it works, and if it doesn't work, we talk about that too. So it's really fascinating that we're talking about parent training and teacher training. Here I am directly. I'm conducting the session, but it's through the parent or through the teacher or through another therapist. So it's really an amazing thing that's happening. But the topic is diverse learning. We know kids learn in different ways, but kids also not learn in different ways. And I'm reminded of a child who was in the classroom, and the teacher comes over to this child and try to help him work with math, and this child has a tantrum, throws over the desk, kicks the garbage can, runs out. He misses an hour and a half a day. I know this firsthand. I was at the school. An hour and a half a day of instruction. So clearly, I guess you might think it's kind of a self-esteem issue. I don't know. It's a behavior problem for sure. Now, the kid loves baseball. Loves baseball. Now, what do? Do we use baseball as a reinforcer to say, you act good in class, have no tantrums, and then you can play baseball? Or do you embrace baseball in some way with his understanding of him and his learning? My viewpoint, my personal viewpoint, I know many of you will differ and that we're up for discussion, is that I'd rather not control the child with punishment and reward. I would like the child to somehow control himself. So I play baseball with him. We have a great time. And now I have to ask everybody here, how do you catch a baseball? Is it better to catch on the side or catch it right in front of you? Well, since I'm not having much of a response, on the side is not as good. And the kid was missing it. He was quite often, not all, but he caught some, but he often missed. I went over to him and I said, you know, I have a better way for you to catch the ball. He goes, yeah. I said, you want to hear it? He says, all right. I said, look, catch the ball in front of you. Don't worry about it hitting your head, because I know that's why he's not doing this. We all have done this. At least in America, learning baseball, we're afraid that this ball's going to hit our head. Don't worry about it. Just do it. He did it. He caught almost every one. And then he says something magical. He says, thank you. I go, whoa, I hardly hear that. But now I got him. He says, thank you. And I said to him, you know, your teacher's doing the same thing. He says, what are you talking about? All your teacher is doing when she comes over to help you with math, she's trying to show you a better way of working, just like I'm trying to show you a better way of catching the ball. He goes, what? Yeah? I said, yeah. He goes, oh. So what? I said, what do you think? She says, yeah, all right. I said, all right. Now, here's the important part. I asked him, what should the teacher say to you tomorrow when she approaches you? I'm empowering him. I'm empowering him to tell me what, to tell the teacher what to say. I call up the teacher that night. I say, look, go over to him and, you know, during math, because that's what we talked about, and say to him, I have a better way for you to do that problem. Okay, because when I asked him, that's what he told me to say. I asked him what to say. He said, just tell her I have a better way for you to do the problem. I gave her the exact words. She was happy to do it because he had a kid an hour and a half losing class every day. And maybe not 100%, but the tantrums diminished them dramatically. So let's think about this for a minute. You can look at the behavior and try to change the behavior with no tantrums, with some kind of reward punishment system, or you can look at what might be underlying the behavior, which is kind of a self-esteem here, empower the kid for his own learning, it better increase the relationship with the teacher, and I hate to say this, but he's becomes relatively happy instead of miserable. So I'm going to give you one more example, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Here's a kid comes to me. He's asking me to teach him how to do this problem with the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem. I'm doing it all different ways. You know, I'm pretty good at this. He's not getting it. I'm not. Finally, I asked him something that has not been asked of him for 4 years. And that is, I asked him, what's going on? No one has asked him that for 4 years. And he said to me, well, you know, I have these thoughts in my head, these interfering thoughts. And I said to him, well, you know, if I find a way, if I have a way of kind of calming those thoughts down, what do you think? He said, that would be great. Now, let me just tell you this as an aside. This kid, he wanted to study for the college entrance exams. Smart kid. He was in an intellectually disabled class. That means an IQ under 70. We used to call these kids mentally retarded. How can he be in an intellectually disabled class? Because of these interfering thoughts, he didn't perform well, he didn't test well. This went on for 4 years. This went on for 4 years that he kept on saying, I don't belong in this class. So for 4 years, he got lower and lower and lower. The system put him down and down and down. And he was in this intellectually disabled class. And he tells me, so what do I do? Now what do I do? He says he has his interfering thoughts. How do I calm that down? So I thought of what profession is best at calming down these thoughts in his head. I got a yoga person in there. I got a yoga teacher to come in. She did her thing with him for about 20 minutes. I gave him a, similar math problem. He did it without a question, without a problem. The mother took the education system to a hearing. She was so upset. I testified and I said, you have taken this child's youth away from him. It was that kind of situation. But here's the lesson. This is a really important lesson. And that is, again, if we look at the kid's ability to perform and try to, teach him what he's trying to learn or what we're trying to teach him, right? We're in charge of what he needs to learn instead of, if you're not learning, how about just asking the kid? Now, this is an example that doesn't work with all kids, but wouldn't it be interesting to find the underlying reason why a kid can't learn if you just ask him? It worked in this case, and he told me. So I have plenty of stories, but I really would like to hear the questions from people and entertain them.
Hello, I request chairpersons to take questions from the audience. Professor Narayan, Professor Rose, Professor Sholapoorwala. Any questions for either of the two speakers? Professor Rose has given a wonderful opening address, and Mr. Bernstein has just finished giving a wonderful lecture. So any questions? Anybody would like to interact? Any interactive session?
Can I?
Both were excellent presentations. We thank both of them for the wonderful presentation. Is there any question that you have added?
I would like to ask, I would like to say something.
Okay. Please.
Professor Richard Rose talked about the purpose of education. Well, that's a very, very important point. Where are we leading to? And today, the teachers themselves are experiencing a lot of new ways and methodology of teaching children. It's a new experience for our teachers also because the complete e-learning has come in now.
Yeah.
It is difficult, but at the same time, so that the children do not suffer, we are trying our best to give them the best. Just end there.
Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Bernstein? Ma'am? Jayanti ma'am?
Yeah, actually, what Rukshana ma'am says, the teachers are trying to put up with the current demand and they are doing it wonderfully well. There are teachers who are totally zero tech savvy, have taken over and started to teach children. And there are also agencies who are trying to come up with simpler teaching methods with the not so expensive gadgets to use. I myself am in touch with a couple of young IT people who want to do this. And also televisions are being used now. Bihar State UNICEF has got the complete Prashar Bharati to have the lessons going on television, the Doordarshan channel. So being very aware of the tech divide between the urban and the rural areas, government and individual efforts are amazingly on. People are really putting up a good fight to get this done. A good point made by Rukshana ji. We are all meeting the challenges. Yes.
Yes, perhaps I could.
Mr. Bernstein?
Well, I think
Richard
wants. I'll just say one thing, that the beauty of the technology is that it can reach people in areas, as long as they have a phone and have some access. It can reach people in rural areas. And some of them, I know I've been in India a year and a half ago. I talked at a conference there. There were some people on the autism spectrum that were totally neglected. And now through media, we could reach some of these kids. So I think it really could be a wonderful thing.
Professor Rose, would you like to?
Yes, I'd certainly reinforce what Dr. Bernstein just said there. Technology can have many, many advantages, but I think we need to be cautious in the way that we approach technology at the moment. I mean, for instance, in my own country, all the talk is about the development of 5G, ever faster broadband, and you know, new technology galloping on at a pace. But even in my own country, there are still people living in some of the remoter parts of the Scottish Highlands, for instance, who have no access to digital technology at all. And I know from my work with Professor Narayan there in India, you know, we were in Telangana state recently, not very far from a metropolitan city, you know, Hyderabad, which is a very modern city. You travel 40 miles from Hyderabad, there are people there who are having difficulty accessing electricity. You know, the pace at which we are moving is aimed to be the pace for those who already have. And we've got to up the pace for those who have very little to give them the basic access to these kind of facilities. And I do worry that because of the technological age, I'll give you a clear example of this. We are now finding publishers who are only publishing e-books. Right, e-books are very useful. You can carry them around on your phone, on your Kindle, on your tablet, whatever you want. But if we don't have paper copies of those books, there are some people who cannot access the books. And that's the end of the story. And, you know, I agree totally with Dr. Bernstein. Digital technology can give us a lot of answers. It can help us greatly. And like him, I've had experience with people on the autism spectrum who have benefited from the fact they can interact with a machine possibly more comfortably than they do sometimes with people. There's no doubt about that. That's a great benefit. But let's not put all our eggs in one basket. Otherwise, we're going to leave a significant number of people behind. People who are living in poverty in particular are going to be left behind. And we're going to increase the gap. And we all know what happens when we increase that gap. We have more and more tensions which lead to breakdown in our society. So please, let's take a bilateral approach. Let's develop the technology, but not forget other people.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for Professor Rose, Mr. Bernstein. We are extremely thankful for you. Thankful to you for your wonderful lectures. Who would like to speak?
There is a question in the inbox by one Richa Pal, who extent the regular curriculum can be modified to cater to the needs with special needs? She has made this question to our speakers.
Do we have to repeat the question? Was it clear?
Yes, and in fact, I could read it on the screen, so that helps.
Mr. Bernstein would like to answer.
Question is, to what extent the regular curriculum can be modified to cater to the needs of special needs kids? I'm going to give you the real answer, whether it's possible or not. The real answer to me is that you need to understand each kid who is in that classroom, that inclusion classroom or that regular classroom. You really have to understand how they learn and what kind of way that they learn best and what may throw them off. There are dozens of things that we really have to assess. I'll give you a simple one. Sensory sensitivity. A child, there's a lot of noise and a lot of light, a lot of people. I have absolutely brilliant kids with reading Sid Arthur every session, but he cannot be in a classroom with just a lot of noise, a lot of children. It creates so much anxiety. So let's see if we could accommodate them. I'll say one more thing about this particular kid, that there was assignment saying, a writing assignment saying, look at your favorite video or your favorite TV show and write about it. It's a writing assignment. He didn't have a favorite video or TV show because he didn't watch TV or videos. He wanted to ask the teacher if he could write the assignment on his favorite book. You know what the teacher said? No. I couldn't believe it. I went to the dean. The dean said no. He has to stick to the curriculum. If a lot of what I said emphasizes a lot of what other people have said today, and everyone here, and this is, the United States is a private school, right? And like, you're sitting there saying, I don't believe it. And I didn't believe it when I was told that too. So these are just examples of how we can and should and need to, and we have to accommodate these kids.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Bernstein. With the permission of the chairpersons, can we proceed now to the next speaker, please? She's been waiting patiently. I think we've overrun the time a little bit. Jayanti ma'am, can we call the next speaker now? Professor Rose? Rukshana ma'am, can we call the next speaker? Thank you so much, Mr. Bernstein. Thank you so much, Professor Rose. Absolutely wonderful. We learned so much from you all. Can we proceed to the next speaker, please? This was an extremely short session. Totally apologize for it. We have to keep on as we're running short of time. Yes, Masarat Khan is the CEO of Maharashtra Dyslexia Association with more than 3 decades of experience in the field of SLD. And she is a practitioner in the field and an extremely successful one. Ma'am, please make your presentation.
Sure. Can you see my screen? Hello, everybody.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Okay.
Screen.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, let me congratulate Manochetna Academic and Research Center, Manovikas Kendra, and Department of Education, Calcutta University for organizing this wonderful virtual conference. Kudos to them for, taking the pandemic in their stride and ensuring that the conference that was to be held in March goes on. And thank you for the opportunity to be one of the presenters here. So my presentation is on phonological awareness, phonics instruction, inclusive practice that benefits all kinds of learners. It's based on the joint paper by Ramiza Khan and me. Both of us have been, researching on this topic for the past 6 years now. And I would like to share what we are doing, though I'm not presenting this as a research paper per se, but more in terms of, the application of what research in the past speaks about phonological awareness and phonics instruction. So there is a meta-analysis of 52 studies that shows us or gives us solid support for the claim that phonological awareness instruction is more effective than alternative forms of instruction or no instruction in teaching phonological awareness and in helping students learn to read and spell. There is also evidence that a measure of phonological awareness in preschool children is a good predictor of reading achievement in the early elementary grades. Systematic phonics instruction helps children to read more effectively than non-systematic phonics or no phonics instruction. So what you can see is repeatedly you have research on research focusing on the importance of phonics instruction and how you need to impart phonics instruction. But what is also important to keep in mind is that phonics instruction without phonological awareness, without imparting active, instruction in phonological awareness, developing phonological and phonemic awareness is of no use. So phonics instruction by itself does not help. So coincidentally, we had some 6 schools from major cities in Maharashtra approach us starting from 2015 over a period of 3 years. So there were 3 schools that were ICSC, 1 state board and 4 schools ICSE, 1 state board and 1 IGCSE school. And not surprisingly, though they all offered various curriculum, what was found that none of the schools, imparted or had teachers who were trained in reading instruction, how to impart. And it is not surprising because we don't have a curriculum over here that trains teachers to teach reading per se. You're taught to teach languages, but what about reading? Also, the whole word approach was mainly being used, and even if they were imparting instruction in phonics, it was at a very superficial level, restricted to just, A says A, B says, and that also not pure. Some of them going like B says B when it should actually be B. So though some of them claim to be imparting phonics instruction, it was not the appropriate phonics instruction and also not adequate. Even if it was appropriate, it wasn't adequate. Of course, they were all mainstream English schools. And by default, everybody, almost all of us are second language learners where English is concerned in India. Very few homes in India have English as first language. So coming back to why they approached us, it was all of them found that their students are reaching class 4, but are struggling with reading. So this was the main concern of all these schools, the heads of the schools, that why our children in class 4 are still struggling with reading. And of course, it cannot be possible, right, that the majority of the schools have dyslexia and so they are struggling with reading. Not possible. 10% of the population, yes, but you can't have 50 and 60% of the population in your class. Then that is something you need to, introspect on, that why do you have such huge numbers? So we decided that we, on analyzing what the areas causing this problem is, we came up with a curriculum for them and for a training program where we trained the teachers in phonological awareness activities, systematic phonics, analogy phonics, the use of alphabetic knowledge, and we introduced graded readers in the school. None of the schools had graded readers, and all this using the multisensory approach. So I'll talk about some of the phonological awareness activities. So for example, if you take listening games, listening is very, very important because all learning happens through listening, and you need to develop listening skills in children. So this is to sharpen the ability to attend selectively to sounds. Then I would like to, show you.
The video not playing clearly.
I am not able to see it. I'm sorry, wasn't it clear? Okay. So this was just a glimpse into how listening games are introduced to sharpen the listening skills. Then poetry, songs, and jingles. Here you use them to enhance their awareness of sound patterns of speech. I hope this video works. Okay, so these were some of the variations of rhymes and activities in rhyming words. And word rhyming is introduced to evoke the realization that almost any word can be rhymed, not just those in other people's poems. So these are some of the activities in the class done. Rhyme stories to teach the children to use meaning and meter to notice and predict rhyming word. And this is teachers are very creative. They have created this rhyme story. So for example, the word introduced is all, and so you have a rhyme story for all. So this is a boy, his name is All, he is not tall, he is small, and so on. Then you have phonemic awareness activities like phoneme isolation, where you have to recognize individual sounds in words. So for example, the first sound in grape. Okay, so that's good. Phoneme identity, where you recognize the common sound in different words. So the sound that is the same in balloon, bundle, and bush. So that's B. Phoneme categorization, where you recognize the word with the odd sound in a sequence of 3 or 4 words. So which is the word that does not belong? So the word is cup. Okay. Phoneme blending, where you have to listen to a sequence of separately spoken sounds and combine them to form a recognizable word. So for example, if I say at, they should be able to say it is bat. Then phoneme segmentation, where you break a word into a sound by either tapping or counting the sounds, or by pronouncing and positioning, or maybe using your fingers. So what are the number, how many phonemes or number of phonemes in 6? So it is there are 4 phonemes, okay? 3 graphemes, but 4 phonemes. Then phoneme deletion is where you have to recognize what word remains when a specified phoneme is removed. So for example, and what is smile without s? It is mile. What is band without j? Ban. What is band without b? And so on. Then onset rhyme manipulation, where you have to isolate, identify, segment, blend, or delete either the onsets or rhymes. So in the word jump, the onset is j and the rhyme is So what is jump without j? So that's And what is jump without That is j. So on the basis of the analysis of books used in primary grades, Wiley and Darrell reported that nearly 500 primary grade words are derived from a set of only 32 rhymes. Okay, so you teach 32 rhymes to the children and you are giving them a vocabulary of 500 primary grade words. When you want to introduce phonics, phonics is sound symbol association. So phonics without writing is meaningless. So while the phonological awareness and phonemic awareness activities are being conducted, side by side, the children receive training in pre-writing skills. So we begin with introducing the ball crayons, then the drop crayons, which are thick, to finer crayons. And then you have the pre-cursive writing before you introduce cursive writing and phonics. So in phonics, we have this alphabet chart, which has the alphabet clock, which has the keywords with the letter sound correspondences. And cursive writing is taught simultaneously through skywriting, desk writing, finger tracing, and crayon tracing. So you can see this example over here. And then, of course, they are given, A4 size paper sheets with the large fonts to trace. So you can see I'm just taking you through, and all this is at the kindergarten level, okay? And you can see how beautifully the children write. This is the sequence in which the phonics is introduced to the children. Okay. And this is some of the aids prepared by the teachers to reinforce phonics. Then analogy phonics, because children come across a lot of words which are not phonetically, which are not phonetic in nature, as well as it's early to introduce the phonics rules to them. So you use the parts of those written words they already know to identify new words. So for example, they are taught old, and then it would be gold, kind, mind, ball, fall, and so on. And then, of course, readers are essential for students to be able to apply their alphabetic and word reading skills to the reading of stories. And it is important to select books in which most words contain the letter sound correspondences that children have been taught up to that point. So the takeaway from this is an effective beginning reading program that comprises of phonological awareness, phonics instruction, and alphabetic knowledge benefits all kinds of learners. Thank you from all the children that you teach. Thank you. So I am not sure whether I overshot the time. If I have overshot,
we have overshot the time. Not only you, but the program is running late. So can I request a quick comment from the chairpersons, please?
That was a wonderful presentation, really wonderful presentation by Masrat ji. I wish she had had more time and it could have been a workshop basically rather than a simple presentation. Anyway, as we say, to see one pot's rice when it is cooked, one little rice is enough to touch and see. And so we could see that how much she has in her that she could share with the rest of us. And I know of schools where she has conducted her workshops and the students have benefited from their wonderful presentation.
Thank you
so
so
much. Wish we have more time. But now, given the time situation, if other chairpersons agree, we can move to the next presenter. And if time permits later, the questions can be taken. If other chairpersons agree to that. But this was fantastic presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Jayanti. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Can we then pass on to the next speaker, please? Thank you so much, Masarat Khan. After ma'am's submission, let's pass on to the next speaker, please. Ms. Ritika Sani. Is Ms. Ritika Sani visible? Ritika Sani has an interesting dual career, dividing her time between playback singing, live stage shows, and spearheading advocacy initiatives for 390, the NGO for disability awareness she founded, where she also works as a trainer and a consultant in disability and inclusion. She's a gold medalist from Rabindra Bharati University, Kolkata, for a master's in music. She is also an actor, television host, and a producer of creative music for Contrasting Shades. Recently, she was honored to have been invited to be a part of panel at the World Diversity and Inclusion Congress and to have been felicitated as one of the top global diversity and inclusion leaders. She has also been awarded the Rex Karamveer Purashkar, a global award for social justice and citizen actions by In Congo. Ms. Ritika Sani, please take the presenter's role.
Thank you so much. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Pranam to Shardaji. Namaskar to all present here, our expert panelists, and of course, the wonderful nearly 400 participants. So Arundhati, thank you so much for doing this, for the resilience that the entire team has shown to come back with this in an online fashion. I am very happy that my presentation is actually 1.5 hours into the conference, because concerns that have already been expressed, and I'm going to quickly go to that and then come to my presentation. Rukshana ji talked about humanizing education, which is how every child should be aware of how they have to treat each other equally, and there has to be a sense of belonging. Anutima talked about how a disability or differences need not be a disqualification. Rukshana ji also talked about how inclusion can become a reality, and if disability is a fact and inclusion is an act, then it can only become a reality if you start a conversation with the academic community, if the teachers are given enough information and the knowledge to overcome their fear of taking care of different needs in the classroom. Richard, I've had the pleasure of meeting, talked about the capability approach. What I'm going to talk about today is a tool that has been developed, hopefully to take care of these concerns. I am going to start my presentation. Okay. Something? Okay, no. Okay, 1 minute. That's a lot. So it's called the, can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so it's called the collective will, which is required for inclusion. And that's why all of us are here. And all of us need to play our part, and at times together, because we talked about collaboration and networking. This is me playing mine. I'm going to quickly tell you about Trinayani, which is an NGO I founded in 2006. And it was founded exactly to take care of the concerns of the non-disabled population of the country. Because if inclusion has to become a reality in all spheres of life, in all aspects of living, it is very important, and I'm talking about our country, that the 90% of the population of our country who are not disabled needs to be at least be informed about disability, because most of us don't have a tangible connection with disability, and we don't want to know, or we don't have to know about disability. But if we want the 10% of the population of the disabled to be their lives to progress the way all our lives progress, it is important that the decision makers who belong to this 90% are informed, given knowledge, given awareness, provided appropriate visibility, and given appropriate information about disability. And 390 was founded in 2006 just to do that, create awareness about disability and diversity issues, and empower the lives of persons with disability. It is a 390 is a cross-disability organization. I have done my B.Ed in deaf education. I've worked with various organizations, but I now work with all disabilities, and I'll run you through a couple of pictures to show you that the way we like to talk about or increase visibility of persons with disabilities is to really take the entire issue of disability into the realm, into the public realm. So we do a lot of our programs which are all inclusive, and by inclusive I not only mean non-disabled people. The Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act now recognizes 21 disabilities. So I also feel that there not only has to be information that non-disabled people need to know about disability, but even within disabilities, people of diverse disabilities need to be empathetic about each other and need to know more about each other. So someone who has a sickle cell disease needs to know what it is like to be deaf, or someone who is visually impaired should be aware of thalassemia or Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis. So these are a couple of photographs. Mainland China, a Valentine Day celebration in 5 cities. This is an inclusive screening of a film that is a housing cooperative. This is the Mahalakshmi racecourse. For the first time at the racecourse in Mumbai, you had 75 people with disabilities. So on a monthly basis, and that's where I agree with Robert, that the online bit has helped, because now our monthly meetups have representation of persons with disabilities from across the country, which was usually not the case when we were doing it on a regular basis every month in Bombay. So these are our so I also curate inclusive events. This was done for CBM for the Include Vidya campaign. We also run a spa, and at any given point of time, my blind therapist, I never miss out on an opportunity to say yes to anybody who wants to give them some space in a public in a public space. So this is the metro station in Bombay, the one on the right. Then you have. These are the awareness sessions that I conduct on capacity building. The first one is for regular school principals in Bombay. The one on the wheelchair, the person on the wheelchair is for Air India SATs because the airline had to understand how to interact, behave with persons with disabilities, for the SNDT University on top, and for the community workers of Sanjog. And so workshops as a trainer and consultant in disability inclusion, I conduct across disability and across professions. Again, everybody reiterated how we need to start a conversation around inclusion and diversity in education. And this musical puppet play we launched in 2019, and I know that teachers from the Maharashtra Dyslexia Association were part of the premier show that took place in Bombay. And now we offer this show to schools because being an entertainer or singer myself, I like to use the creative medium to talk about inclusion or diversity in inclusion, diversity inclusion within education through creative medium. So this is a puppet play. I do a radio show on disability. We have films on disability. Now, the reason I'm on board today for this international conference is for this. In order to have our teachers given some sort of first-hand information about various aspects of disabilities, the language of disabilities, the kinds of disabilities people can have. 2 years of research, and we launched the Disability Awareness Game Kit, which is which has 6 card games. It has a workbook with an original story on disability and worksheets, and it has I'm going to show this to everybody because you can see the book. This is what the box looks like, and this is the information booklet. This is the booklet. This is the magazine, which has an original story and worksheets. And then there are 6 card games. The idea of this Disability Awareness Game Kit is to be played with families, and the project that we've launched is that we are distributing it to schools with a workshop specially for teachers. This is again the a game kit. I'm going to take you through individual games so that this is what it looks like. The front of the box, it says Towards Inclusion, 6 thrilling card games, Disability Awareness Game Kit, including worksheets, answer booklet, and instructions. Every deck has an instruction sheet inside it, and every deck. This is the back of the box. This was developed by me as a consultant in disability inclusion and Padma Shastri of Samam Vidya in Bangalore. We worked on it for 2 years. We played the games across stakeholders for 2 years in Bangalore and Bombay while taking in all the suggestions that were given to us. The first game is in the lines of the popular game Uno, which is called Do You Know? Am I still being heard? Is everybody with me? Just a quick yes from somebody.
Yes, yes. Yes, you can be heard.
Thank you so much, Arundhati. Do You Know is a card game on the lines of the popular Uno. And if most of you who've played the games, you play this game where you match a card the basis of the color or on the basis of the number. But here, you're matching it on the basis of color and categories of disability knowledge. So there are 10 categories of disability knowledge. There are 60 cards in this game, 50 category cards. And the categories are like movies to do with disabilities, sporting events related to disability, certain important vocabulary to do with deafness, some certain vocabulary to do with blindness, values, certain values that you need to have irrespective of whether you're disabled or not. So this is what Do You Know is all about. I wish I could, anybody who needs to know more, the kit is ready, can send me a mail and we can talk about it. The second card game, which is my favorite, is called Barriers Begone. And Barriers Begone is about matching barriers faced by persons with disabilities with their solutions. So the barriers are red cards in color red. The solutions are in green. And while they are playing it, they, in order to facilitate matching, because the awareness level, unfortunately, is low. So to facilitate the matching, in each set of a barrier and a solution, one particular word is in italics so that they can match. In between, you can see a card which says, can you think of a solution? Because while we were playing with children, we realized, when they had a barrier card, they themselves came up with an answer. And we thought that was important. You had to have them be creative. So within the Barrier Begone deck, you have 4 cards which says, can you think of your own solution to this problem? And I must say we have gone slightly more diverse with Barriers Begone. It just not talks about disabilities. It talks about, as you might see here, there's a potholed road. There's a talk about empathy. Is empathy more important? Or, so there are all kinds of barriers and solutions that we've talked about in Barrier Begone. The next is called Say This, Not That. We are all aware of how we are always telling our friends to be very careful about the language we use, because language empowers, it hurts, and it can also make you feel good. Especially with disabilities, we know about the various phrases that are commonly used by people, even people who work within the sector. So I thought it was very important to have a game which says, say this, not that. So in this game, you are matching 3 appropriate phrases to the 1 inappropriate phrase that's there in the card. I want to reiterate again that the entire idea of the game kit is to talk about or to front load anybody about diversity and disability in a very low pressure and fun way. There is no teaching, there is no lecture. You're simply playing a game, and with every game you have to win. So the instruction sheet tells you how you will win the game. And why in the last 2 years while we were doing this, we realized that it really cut across ages. You had grandparents liking to do it. We have a very interesting organization here called Muktangan, and Mr. Liz and Sunil Mehta, I played it with them and they loved it. So it is being appreciated by all. The instruction card gives you all the information about how to play the card. This is the only game, surprise, surprise, which is not a it's not a game to win. It's a discussion game. It has 2 cards called misconceptions and facts and number of sentences, and you simply have to read out the sentence and place it against the misconception card or under the fact card. And a lot of discussion takes place. This is one game which has, wherein, even special educators, and when we did it in a special needs school with teachers, they realize, it makes them understand or challenge their own perceptions and stereotypes that they have or they carry about people with disabilities. The next one is called Here. And this is very interesting. We read newspapers every day, but most of the time, perhaps we miss out on some very interesting information or articles which have to do with the issues of disability. So all this card does is you have to match the right article to its appropriate headline. So it's a headline and article game. This is and of course, the next one, I'm rushing because I know it's 10 minutes and I don't want to go. So the next game is called Bingo, on the lines of Housey. We've all played it. But what this will do is it will allow the teacher or the player to familiarize themselves with not only phrases to do with disability, but also the pictures, because that's what the game is all about. Each bingo sheet has 9 words, and what you need to do when you're playing it, and of course, every game you have to play it in a different fashion, which is there in the instruction sheet. But in this game, you have to match the right picture to the right phrase on the bingo sheet. Once again, when we were playing it, we realized that, many of us are not aware of refreshable braille display, or are not supposed to know if you're not working with disabilities. But from an advocacy driven point, or from awareness generation and sensitization, we thought it's still important. So what we've done is every card has a number on it, which corresponds to a number on the sheet. So even if you can't recognize it, you need to then match the card, the number, and place it. So we've tried to also make it easy so that people would want to continue to play the game. These are pictures of a few of these pilots that we did across cities and across. This was done. In fact, this was in Maryland, in USA. The one where the bingo sheets are on the floor, and the Unos on the floor. The one featuring me is the one in Bangalore. This is again, that's Padma in the sari, and this was in her organization. This young lady is an MIT graduate, and when she played the facts and misconceptions, she was herself extremely taken aback by the information that she didn't have, or she thought was a fact, but it was not a fact. So the Disability Awareness Game Kit, to all my wonderful panelists, experts, and listeners and participants, is to be taken on just like any other game, and you play it like any other game, except that repeated playing, which is the case. Very important thing about learning. Repeated playing will give you information about some very basic aspects of disability. I must say it here that we started working on it in about 2014-15, ideating about it. We nearly had one kit ready when the 2016 Right to Persons with Disabilities Act happened. And therefore, we re-looked into it to be able to include certain other disabilities that the new act was also recognizing. Just one last thing, Arundhati, because of the online thing that's happening, I just wanted everybody to be aware that adapting to the present situation, we have already started the process of creating digital versions of these games, because the kits have been created thanks to support by the German consulate. But now we are. My last slide, which says that the kit might look placid, but it's like a soda bottle. When you open it, it'll open. It has a lot of fizz of ideas and thoughts inside, and hopefully will help to create an inclusive and a respectful and tolerant world. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are indeed looking for the fizz, and it's a wonderful presentation, and you did answer quite a few questions.
Can I ask?
And they wanted to know if the online version is available. And you did answer that question. Is anybody asking any question? Debushri, want to come in?
Most of the questions yes. From where do you get these games?
Rukshana ma'am,
your address.
I'm sorry, I
share your address, because most of the people want to know from how do you procure these games?
From me, Rukshana, from Trinayani. I'm in Bombay. So I will share in the chat box, I will share my number and my email ID. And anybody who's interested in the game kit will simply have to send me a mail or a WhatsApp. Thank you so much, Rukshana, for reminding me.
And I just wanted to ask you, can we play these games with special children?
Absolutely, you can. I think
it's in a special school setup.
Of course you can. We will just have to, when you can't play all the games with them, but to be able to play certain games, I will be able to tell you how to go about or using which aspects of the game. Yes, you can, of course.
So I'll get in touch with you later
Thank
on.
you so much. Sure, Rukshana.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm so sorry for keeping the sessions short, such informative and wonderful sessions. I thank the chairpersons, Professor Rose, Professor Jayanti Narayan, and Professor Rukshana Sholapoorwala for this interactive session. And we now pass on. Unfortunately, it could not be that interactive because we're running short of time. And I can see our next chairperson, Habiba Hussain, is waiting very patiently. I now pass on the session to be handled by Organizing Secretary, Professor Debushri Banerjee. Professor Banerjee.
Thank you, Dr. Shakti. Yes. Hello, am I audible? Hello.
You are? Yes, you are.
Hello.
You are.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, it's really disheartening to stop people from such a wonderful session that was going on, but I'm sure.
Talk issue.
Now there is a drop issue. I think Professor Banerjee's line dropped. Is she back now? Is Professor Banerjee back now? Hello?
Madam?
Is she back now? Shall we wait for her? Shall I give the introduction to Professor Habiba Hussain? Please ask Professor Banerjee. We are already running late.
Okay, I think problem is that.
Okay.
I mean, we can.
Probably her internet is not is giving her a little trouble. Is she back now, or shall I proceed? Professor Banerjee is back. Please introduce Professor Habiba Hussain and Professor Rajiv Chatterjee.
You are not audible, ma'am. There was
Professor Banerjee.
I'm not. Yes. Hello. Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Oh. She has many areas of interest. Some of them are educational technology, educational management, research methodology, soft skills, etc. Now, Professor Rajiv Chatterjee. He is a faculty in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, NITTR, and he has been here since January 2001. Previously, he was working as a lecturer in an engineering college. I would ask to Professor Rajiv Chatterjee and Professor Habiba Hussain. Professor Hussain and Professor Chatterjee, could you turn your space?
Good afternoon to everybody.
Namaskar.
Yes, and moving over to our speaker, very important speaker right now is Mr. D. Chandra. He is president, founder, member of the Madras Dyslexia Association, MDA, Chennai. It is in operation since 1991. He is a distinguished alumnus, awardee of IIT Madras. He is involved in a number of social enterprises in health and education. He reached the training to over 13,000 teachers, mainly catering to the underprivileged sections of the community. We are really honored to have with us Mr. Chandrasekhar. So,
yeah, please connect my video.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Now I would hand over the mic to Habiba Hussain. Habiba?
Yeah.
Habiba.
Yeah, welcome all of you, and a special welcome to the speaker of this session, Mr. D. Chandrasekhar. Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
We are pleased to have you in this session, and I think we are already running short of time, so we'll begin with your session.
Yeah. I'm just getting set.
Yes, sir.
Is my slide visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. So, good afternoon, and thank you very much for providing me this opportunity to make a presentation in this August gathering of over 300 people. I admire the tenacity of Mrs. Arundhati Sarkar in putting through this program despite all the difficulties that she would have faced. And I do hope I'm able to do a proper presentation here. So, the Madras Dyslexia Association is a 28-year-old organization striving hard to create a dyslexia-sensitive society. For the benefit of those who do not know much about dyslexia, it's a neurological condition. It's mostly hidden, lifelong, and there will be an actual gap between the performance and the innate latent potential. And it does affect the emotional and social well-being of the child. The child has an average IQ of above 80, 85. It will be able to think out of the box. It will have a different dimensional thinking. The child is talented, has intelligence, and early intervention with remedial teaching can help these children. Madras Dyslexia Association is a not-for-profit organization established in 1991, and we have been working mostly in helping children with the underprivileged background. And we are aspiring to have a national reach, and we use modern technology to cut geographical and economic barriers. Our initiatives include awareness through publications and in all media. We have full-time remedial centers, part-time remedial centers. We set up resource rooms in schools to take care of the children in the respective schools. We have set up over 75 resource schools, not only in Tamil Nadu, but outside Tamil Nadu also. Then we have a program to train the mainstream teacher. And as was mentioned in my introduction, over 13,000 teachers have been empowered so far. We do have an intensive teacher training program, and we try to bring in technology and assistive devices. Now, coming to teacher empowerment, every teacher can help about 5 to 10 children. And just imagine these 13,000 teachers, what they can do now. Now, the latest development at MDA is we have a digitized training program operating at the NPTEL platform of IIT Madras. This program is now transferred to the Tamil Nadu teacher platform, which is visited by 500,000 teachers. So we are moving towards having greater reach and greater impact. Now I'll come to the subject of my discussion. Dyslexia, as we know, hampers reading, spelling, writing, and math in the academic environment. Reading is an essential life skill and enables an individual to achieve the academic goals. In a school, a child needs to be able to read not just the textbook and the blackboard, but also the question paper independently. The child needs to recognize the words and also understand what has been read. This should be done fluently. Children with SLD can be systematically trained by means of direct instructions using multisensory approach to read fluently. Now, to achieve this automaticity, these strategies need to be internalized and applied on demand. Use of technology can complement remedial teaching to enhance this teacher learning process, and this is achieved by the MDA Hours Reader. As you see, by using strategies to read words fluently and understand the vocabulary, reading becomes meaningful. This increased exposure builds the required automaticity in reading. These are some of the salient features of the app. Reading out the text or word makes the child familiar with word and its pronunciation. Read the text as seen in print or in a distraction-free text-only format. Tracking keeps the reader on the line and avoids missing lines or words. Easy to access hint button that pops up strategies and hints to read the difficult word. The hints include words that sound similar, as in rhyming words, breaking up the word into root word, prefixes, and suffixes. Syllabication of the word that helps the reader to meaningfully split the word and read it correctly. Pictures to help understanding the word. Call out of the word to know how to pronounce the word. It can also read passage line by line. A teacher or parent can ask leading questions to help the child understand this line. The app can be used for not only the preloaded stories, but also for any books or materials which is of interest to the child. The child can build his own library and hence be motivated to read independently. The new material could be made available to the app as a picture or as a PDF, or could be shared by a friend. The app can be set to suit the needs of the reader. It is customizable. For example, in read aloud option, the voice heard and the speed of reading can be selected. In the text mode, the spacing between words and line, font size can be set as required. The extent of hints displayed can also be customized. Color overlays are available to suit the reader's preferences. Over 2,000 people are already using this app all over, and we are pleased to give you certain testimonials that we have received from an institution in Calcutta, We Can resources. Some of the teachers have made use of this app and they found very meaningful results. We have been receiving very encouraging feedback from the users of the MDA Avaz Reader from all over. The app is in a state of continuous development. Usually, the app is used in a handheld device like a phone or iPad. Recently, we have created an additional facility. By downloading a software, you will be able to operate the app on a laptop, which means you can project it on the wall and use the app simultaneously to teach the entire class. I request you to please go to the App Store, collect a MDA Avaz Reader app for a 15-day free trial and experience yourself. You may, of course, buy it if you want. We also have a few free subscriptions for teachers working in government schools. That brings me to the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. D. Chandrasekhar.
Yeah.
That was a wonderful presentation. We would take one or two questions if anybody has any question. Well,
it seems, sir, everybody is in praise of your presentation. So they wanted the slide sharing.
Sir Rajiv Chatterjee.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. D. Chandrasekhar for your presentation. So to sum up this regarding this presentation, I would like to highlight that you very well highlighted the silent features of the dyslexia, outline the initiative taken by Madras Dyslexia Association, and you also mentioned in your presentation the training of the trainers, we normally called it NITTR, or you can say training of the teachers, that how the system, and you also placed a digital training platform with the help of IIT Madras, and you said that how this can help the child with dyslexia to come out and help in reading another thing. Not to mention that you came up with the mobile technology apps and other things that will help a child to learn. So this was really, you can say it's a milestone, because mobile technology has been penetrating in every society, and especially in the urban area, it is very deeply penetrated. So you have come up with your you have taken that role of the technology and come up with that mobile technology and app that will help definitely children to learn. So not only your presentation, I find that the entire Madras Dyslexia Association is doing a lot of activity through your presentation and your initiative that will definitely help the child to gain something in the future. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
We'll always be happy to learn more, and at times, if required, we'll definitely be in touch with you, because myself, I'm working with technology enabled learning. So if required, I will definitely approach you from my personal point of view, so that you can help us. Thank you. Thanks for the
Thank you.
So I hand over the mic to now Professor Devarsi Banerjee.
Yeah, we thank the organizers for providing this wonderful opportunity to be a part of this important conference. And thank you, Chandrasekhar, once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hussain and Dr. Chatterjee. I would now request Dr. Sarkar to take charge of the next session.
আনমিউট করলাম, আসছে না
Arundhati Di, you can't be heard.
নো, আমি আনমিউট করছি ম্যাম, দাঁড়ান। Yes, ma'am, can you hear me? No. Please unplug your headphone. Unplug your headphone from device. Hello. Plug it again. Plug it again. No. No, ma'am. What happened? So Devasi ma'am, please.
Dr. Sarkar, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Can you just see if something is wrong that side? No, mute, unmute. Can you bring your mouth more towards the microphone?
No. Without no. Microphone. No. Please leave and join again. If possible, please leave and join again. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
আমি কি ফোনে নেব, লাউড স্পিকারে নেব ম্যাডামকে?
হ্যাঁ, প্লিজ।
Okay, just. Madam, I will call you. Just.
Maybe because of the bad weather, there is some problem in the link.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Devasthi madam?
We can hear
Okay.
you. Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Yes. Okay. I somehow have gone out of this. Anyway, I'll carry on. Deboshri, I think it's best if you introduce and carry on with plenary session too. Please carry on. We are wasting a lot of time. Please carry on.
Okay. 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 Now we come to our next plenary session. I would request Dr. Nilanjana Sannal, who is going to chair the plenary session, to be on stage. Dr. Sannal. Dr. Nilanjana Sannal, madam.
Okay.
Okay. Now we'll have Jayanti Narayan, madam, and Dr. Kishore Thomas.
I'm here, Professor Banerjee. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon, madam.
But I don't know whether I cannot see Nilanjana madam out here.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
Okay,
here.
okay, madam. Madam, will you please take charge? Okay, thank you, madam.
Yeah, I'll definitely take. Okay.
Yes, madam, you're audible.
Yes. Am I audible?
Please
Yes,
turn on your video.
So, switch video, please, Nilanjana di.
It's not coming. It's not coming.
Oh.
Okay. So
yeah. It has come. It has come.
Yeah. You are visible.
Okay.
Yes, yes, we can see you now.
Should I
Thank
start?
you, ma'am.
Yes. Devasthi, should I start?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay.
Please, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. I really congratulate the organizing committee for arranging such an interesting international seminar on this diversity condition being included in learning processes. And the speakers from the morning, as I am listening to them, I could find that all of them in their own way, either providing us with some philosophy, some conceptual strategies to be adopted in order to help these children's life, but more interestingly is the hand-on tips that they are providing that is of utter importance, because to me it seems that the mosaics of human population on this earth is clearly pinpointing that individual differences are evident every day, everywhere, in every sequences of life. We really cannot take our mind away from differences that is there between individuals, among individuals. But the situation when it is inviting some problem in the kids and they are being placed as not adequate in terms of cognitive abilities, instantly the trauma takes place in the families. It is not just the trauma in a family, it's a trauma in the society, it's a trauma for the whole world itself, because cognitive superiority is the claim of Homo sapiens, particularly the human beings. In the phylogenetic order, since they are the topper, we always like to have the maximum intelligence, the maximum cognitive abilities, and the basic aim of this cognitive ability is to have the aspiration to go for learning, if possible, higher learning. With this learning, it is just not a fact that we want to acquire knowledge and be an achiever in life, but learning seems to be the tool to be adaptive and adjustive in our life context. But all people are just not being fortunate enough to have adequate qualities there. So the lapses are there, the lackings are there, the deficiencies are very prominent. When this situation takes place in life, then we call for such seminars, conferences, that topic must be the learning in diversity. The basic knowledge of science, together with the knowledge from other related disciplines like neurology, physiology, psychology, sociology, and definitely education, they all together is trying to help designing the ways and means of imparting education to these people, these children, the unfortunate ones, so that they also become equipped to a great extent and ultimately become the resource person for the resources for the world itself. In order to help them to acquire this situation, already too many researches have taken place throughout the world. That is why internationally, each and everyone is coming forward with their set of experience, their set of knowledge to share, so that everybody gets its benefit and impart the knowledge in a specific way in order to help these kids to be independent in their life, to learn self-management as well as learn something else so that they can meet the demands of outside reality. The serious thoughts are there, and the present seminar is also such an effort. The principle and the system of learning is to penetrate a zone of knowledge, a zone of new knowledge. The knowledge is expected to take us towards the perspective of interpreting the life experiences. So, with all the limited capacities within ourselves, all of us need to be in a position so that we learn from our knowledge plateaus in life. To help all these people, the educated minds need to be there. Not only education as a subject to be studied, the educated mind. With this educated mind, I feel that we should have respect and regard for such children. We should respect the deficiency, the limits of deficiency in each one of them, so that from this respect, the compassionate attitude, the acceptance of that stark negative reality, we would be able to be there emotionally with these children so that whatever we try to teach them, they'll pick it up. And one day, at one point, they would also be independently doing something that would be their achievement. In that context, the success of education would be considered to be an attained stat. Since we have very little time, I don't think I should carry on for more and more with the kind of experiences that I have regarding these children, or with the kind of clinical experiences that I've acquired over these almost 3 decades of life. I would like to invite the speakers in the situation to place their views. In this session, the focal point of interest would be learning disability. And to discuss the learning disability, we have 2 great speakers. They are loaded with academic awards, academic qualities, academic experiences to talk about certain things. They would cover different aspects of learning disability. And the first speaker in the situation, in the context, would be Jayanti Narayan. We are listening to her, and the flexibility in her personality, the basic presence with grace, I have already noticed, and I take great pleasure in introducing both the speakers in the situation. Jayanti Narayan is a special educator, currently a visiting professor at the University of Northampton, UK. She has retired as the Deputy Director of the National Institute for the Mentally Handicapped, NIMH, Government of India. She completed her post-graduation in the State University of New York, USA, specializing in education of learning disabilities and mental retardation. She holds another MA in education and PhD. She received Fulbright Senior Research Fellowship for postdoctoral program at Boston College, Massachusetts, USA. She was awarded honorary doctorate by the University of Northampton in 2018. Dr. Narayan has been a consultant in special education in countries including Indonesia, Maldives, China, Bhutan, Cambodia. She is being hired by UNICEF, NDP, WHO, and international agencies. She has numerous research publications in national and international journals of repute. Her presentation topic would be Specific Learning Disabilities, Ways Ahead. I would request Professor Narayan to present her paper.
By the way, you said the platform for I thank Calcutta University and Manochetna for the opportunity that you're giving me after this conference. I'm learning so much. Each speaker has been so wonderful, diverse in the content they were presenting. I couldn't see a petition except endorsing the Ranjana's presentation, not put in a nutshell, was wonderful. I'll try to do my best given time. And thank you all so much for this opportunity. I'll have PowerPoint shared. Is it coming up? I've shared the PowerPoint. Is it coming up?
It's still coming. Please wait 10 to 15 seconds. It will come.
I can see it shared. Do you see it shared now? Seeing it shared?
Yeah, it's visible now.
Okay.
We can see now, ma'am.
I'll make it full screen so that it's visible in small.
Click on slideshow and
yeah. Now it is full.
Yes.
Yes, I'll move it myself. Okay. Now, diverse learners has been your team. And who are the diverse learners here? So, those identified as academic underachievers, generally for any reason, or considered as diverse learners, could be due to disabilities, could be due to socio-cultural issues, could be due to poor teaching, which all of us teachers have to give us a role there to see, am I right in my teaching before you call a child underachiever? And then the emotional behavioral disorders. But when we come to specific learning disabilities, a child will be an underachiever in one or more subjects, yet not having any of these above mentioned conditions. That is, he will not have a sensory, motor, or intellectual impairment in him. Emotional issues will not be there, and the teaching considered to be going well. You will find the child not doing as well as. Then you suspect LD, SLD, now they call it as SLD. So the first step you take towards diagnosing specific learning disability. Get these other conditions that has been mentioned here. Say, oh, all of these are okay in him and still he is not learning. Why? And first we will see what happens to him as a secondary effect of the SL, because those invisible conditions are not easily recognized. Many a time it leads to other secondary. I urge all the teachers to be sensitive so that we not allow the child to get into this. Now look at this that has on the scene. Look at the top position, the 12th position, as you see. The teacher first gets alerted and she finds poor marks being right. The child has to go to tuitions. Some teachers, good teachers, take the child after the school hours and free of cost try to help this child by just parents do what you can. Some are sarcastic too. I'm not spending more time on this because you're all teachers of you and you know what I mean by this. So when this becomes concern, the students start to feel powerless. The student thinks I'm doing best. What am I doing wrong? I have to be wrong. I'm just like anybody else. these children do not have any condition in them that indicates learning in him. So he's not like he's angry. I am doing my best, but still the like me kind of. So his feeling turns to beliefs that he thinks that he believes the teacher is indifferent to me, the teacher is me, the teacher doesn't like me. So what does he do in action? Our feelings, when repeatedly endorsed, become beliefs, and the beliefs lead to our actions, right? So the action here is incomplete work, slow, messy, negative. How much ever I do, the teacher doesn't appreciate. Why should I effort? Number one, teacher doesn't understand me. What I do, the teacher finds. Take this example of this child against another child in the class. Was this child tends to get a aggregate of letters. Child is getting a 90%. Both of them work hard, work hard, work hard. So the child works very hard. 20% has become a 30%. That does be good. And the 90% child has got a 97. To oh, 3 more would have got to say, and this child, oh, you are still child's increment is single digit income. This child was on 15 marks above. Teacher still says you go along to 35. Now, what will the child think of his the status with the, so these are described. There are secondary psychological issues that arise and complicate the participation. Please teach my first appeal to all of you. Please look at the child when he's getting 4 marks. Be done by talking to parents. Support for him. You be first of all nice to him and be helped. Why is he not learning? Should be the question in the mind rather than you're not doing well, you're not good. You see, so the teacher's responsibility. This is my appeal to all the teachers. Try and prevent happening. And our PWD today talks about specific learning disabilities. Recently, then a lot of been listening since the morning from 2 MDAs, one from Chennai, one from Maharashtra and various other places. You know, so they've been the ones who have been working hard to help the child. But now we have, good news is that we have it in the Act, and they have this definition given. The blue highlight is done by me, just so that it, areas where they tend to have a problem, difficulty to comprehend, like to do mathematical calculations. Dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, and developmental aphasia. Good news is like is not to fight for their right. We didn't fight for us. Very shortly put, this is available.
Sometimes breaking, audio breaking. You are now audible.
Was it?
Yes, ma'am, it's clear.
I found the video when so I am not audible also.
Okay, and actually I stop your video, so yes, audible.
Yes, yes, ma'am, it's clearer now.
Okay.
Ma'am, it's clearer now.
So that they organs receive the information, they okay in children with specific learning disability. As we saw in the definition, seeing, hearing, that issues seem okay them, but they tend to have the brain, perception, and memory area, leading to difficulty in output, that is motor function, speech, action, that includes the writing activities and comprehension, all of those, which are all the expressions. Be very quick, short these things because you are aware of this, considering the time factor. So whatever is the definition, that these 5 components are there to call a child having specific learning disability, that is difficulty in learning academic, discrepancy component which is now not in the ICF and other DSM definitions but important, and the potential and achievement of the child. He has high potential but his achievement shows low. The more discrepancy, the severe learning the child might be having. Some kind of neurological involvement in the child and also deficits in his processes and exclusion of other conditions that we are seeing from the slide 1. No sensory motor intellectual impairment in him and yet having a learning issue. What happens to them if they are left to themselves? See, the school failure leads to poor academic performance, social friends will be very few, they may be loners. As we saw in that cycle, the psychological issues, further education will be affected with the career too. And currently what we are seeing now is they remain in the mainstream schools with or without help because identified, as we saw. Some individual voluntary efforts that we are being by a number of agencies in our country doing their bit. School efforts, some schools have resource rooms that tend to help them. In special as well as in regular school, you find these resource rooms. And some government efforts in terms of giving them the writing examination, curricular lenience in the curriculum, some provisions are made and also the examination allowances. If nothing, the child tends to drop out after a while. Another issue that we are facing today is to do with the assessment. Who should be assessed? Them. What in them should be assessed? What assess them? What tools must be used? How certify? What does the certificate entitle the person who is asked? So these are the issues. Now Government of India this Gazette notification as to who should assess. Assessment should be done to call a person as having specific learning disability. The salient features in that it includes that there should be the medical superintendent, a rehabilitation psychologist, therapist or a special educator who is trained to assess disabilities. Among the various disability assessments that Government of India has come up with, this is the only assessment where an educator or a special educator has been given a place in the team. All others have the other specialists, whereas being exclusive to the problem to do with the academic, a special educator has been included in this team. So we'll all have to gear up to do that, right? And the certificate being given to them, the child should not be assessed at the age of 8 years. Reason being, give him 2 years of academic exposure before calling him or labeling him, because without an exposure, you can't do justice to the label you're going to give. So let the child be in the school system for a minimum of 2 years, and you see the difference between his potential and achievement, or having no other disability or disadvantageous conditions, he still fails. Allow the 2 years to assess all that informally. Then you do the first formal assessment. Age of 14, more assessment. Some of these children catch up or mix learning disability at some point that you are not sure. So various reasons. So do it at the age of 14. And the final single lifelong certification happens at the end that in totally we are having preparation of the teachers in regular schools, special schools, because this is a condition that is not meant for special schools. This is meant for, these are children who are supposed to be being in the school, and therefore the teacher equipped and special teachers to support her in the form of resource teachers. and therefore I'm going a little faster considering the time available with us. And there are supports, meta-analysis done saying that the regular school teachers are ready to work with these practical problems of the preparation to be a teacher for children with disability. Look at the study done in 1996 with 28 studies meta-analyzed, and this is the today see the recent reports. You teachers see, but teachers are not having the time and competencies. We need to work towards it. One is from the morning we've been listening to our other experts also that consider all children to regular schools, teachers be paid to accept them using this universal design of Rukshana ji also mentioned in the morning, universal design is not just for very in the classroom. What you basically this is the steps. Allow the children, when you teach using multiple modes of presentation, not just the chalk and talk method, but the various methods. The presentation that we had by Sahana ji, her stories, wonderful. This is one way of reaching people with information. The wonderful is with the clipping that we Masrat Khan ji, fantastic. So reach with multiple modes of representation to the children. Therefore, the children receive the information. Allow them also to express in multiple modes, not just written examination. Maybe they do a little project through which they explain to you, do a little drawing. What you have taught, he has understood this way. And the third point that comes up in this is engage them at various levels of challenge of child. Not all children have to do little bit of extra work, so teaching them at their level. This is the social design for learning. So first you do the assessment, where there will be used must appropriate. Do you assess and the teaching plans, and therefore what is the curriculum and teaching? So modifying that. Then how are you going to teach, keeping the universal design in mind? What are the various modes and materials you will teach? What are group teaching, and how are you going to do this? So what do all this? Do you see a progress in the child at formative level? That is what our education system calls as continuous comprehensive evaluation, CCE. And end of the year, how much has been his increment? So if we tend to do this systematically, we are really reaching our each child with what he deserves to get. And design, when you are using digital materials, are very much in use today. We have already been seeing the digital materials and its use. Yeah. So wherever possible, because every corner of India cannot be reached with that, we know that. Wherever possible, is one of the classrooms that you see. The children tend to have a video conference. Second grade children. So today's children in the country, some of the world, are lucky to have this, but many a time where they cannot be reached, well, we have to look at alternatives. These are some of the web links of India. I think I will send this PowerPoint to Arundhati so you can. This is a web link reaching with to children with. As I have mentioned here, that of Sri Chandrasekhar ji, that he gave how we function. It reaches all children with disability. Very easy. Not only children with SLD, but all children with disability, they are friendly. They are storybooks, graded storybooks, grade 1 to grade 4. Beautifully done. Yeah, and different instruction is one more thing. I'm touching, considering edition is one where you use various teaching, various amount that reduces or increases the child's capacity. Output again is based on the child's capacity. Alternate curriculum used, all of those. In other words, you would tend to use all of these techniques when you do differentiated instructions: accommodation, adaptation, modification, team teaching, dual teaching, cooperative learning, CCE, intuitive learning. Yeah, ultimately you will have equality for equity. When we or equity, it should be quality. Make sure that equality is maintained, opportunity for all children. And multiple intelligences, if you know, being children with specific abilities, looking for their other abilities all the time. Apart from academics, please keep looking at all the other abilities. One of them may be very, very superior that he may make his life with that. So this is very important. Look at this. I want to close with this by Branson, who all he says, more than 50 years have passed and I am still as bad at spelling as I was at school. I know I am not alone in this struggle though, and it is wonderful to have networks like Made by Dyslexia helping the world to understand, value and support people with dyslexia. At the end of the day, dyslexia is just a different way of thinking, not a disadvantage. He says it all in one quote. And that is what we all want to live and strive towards, helping children who have this problem. Thank you all. These are some references. Thank you all so much for the opportunity. It is important in the area. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Arundhati, madam.
Nilanjanadi, I think Professor Thomas is also waiting. He has a family meeting. So, thank you.
Hello, Dr. Jayanti, I thank you profusely for such a wonderful presentation. The whole domain of dyslexia you have presented in a canvas, in a single canvas. Conceptually, you discussed it. You talked about the existential problems that you face with a dyslexic child, and then you come out with the scientific methods of dealing with them. And ultimately, with Richard Gordon's quotation, when you end it, it's your feel towards the dyslexic children that came out, and that made all of us feel that we should have some feeling for these children, and we should come together to help them in any way. Thank you very much. Since time is very short, if there is question, let us have the questions at the end of this session. Before that, I would like to introduce second speaker of this situation. He's also a very known person. Even in Calcutta, he was very known. Mr. Dr. Thomas Kishore is currently an additional professor of clinical psychology, National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. He did his Bachelor of Mental Retardation, NIMH, Secunderabad, India. He did his MPhil in Medical and Social Psychology from Central Institute of Psychiatry, Ranchi, and he did his PhD also in Clinical Psychology from the same institute. Some of his recognitions include Rita Peshwari Fellowship 2014 for carrying out research in the area of autism. He had been conferred ISCP Child and Adolescent Mental Health Award for the year 2014 by Indian Association of Clinical Psychologists. He was the editor of the special issue of the Journal of Intellectual Disabilities on service delivery models for people with intellectual disabilities in developing countries, September 2017. His areas of interest include child and adolescent mental health, neurodevelopmental disorders, early detection intervention of mental health problems, psychodiagnostics in children, family functioning, stress, and coping related to childhood disorders. He has a number of publications in peer-reviewed international national journals, along with chapters in books, conference proceedings, compendia, etc. He is a member of the editorial board of the International Advisory Board, Journal of Intellectual Disabilities UK, apart from his membership in other learned professional bodies. His topic for today's presentation is emotional trauma of children with learning disability. Dr. Kishore, I would invite you to come to the forum and present your paper.
Thank you, ma'am. This is such an honor that so many kind words have come from you. None of this I shared. Perhaps the organizers have given you that information. All I would have liked to be introduced as one professional who would like to work with children and adolescents. Thank you. And my great respect for the organizers for braving all the oddities and making this program possible. And especially my appreciation and the thanks to Professor Dept Banerjee, whom I know personally, and Arundhati Sarkar Madam for continuously coordinating with me so humbly. And added to this is to share this platform with my teacher, Professor Jayanti Narayan, who herself is almost equated with the history of modern history of special education in this country. So with this, I would like to come to my main topic. See my PPT? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It's visible, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Make it full screen.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah,
Is it better now? Right.
Yes, yes.
Yes, thank you. My talk I'm going to present under the following headings, just to briefly draw support and what SLE is, and also to understand what causes, so that whether we can draw implications for psychosocial interventions and the developmental significance of this invisible condition and the need for emotional support from the point of the emotional impact that we have evidence for intervention and conclusion. Since we are all aware that SLE is a neurodevelopmental condition and primarily it's regarded as a language-based disorder, the implications are that unless the child is showing some kind of problem manifesting in reading, writing, and arithmetic, that no way that we can identify this condition. So unlike other sensory motor or neurological conditions, we know that there are no physical symptoms that can give clue about this one. Therefore, even anything that we talk about, early language abnormalities or any other perceptual problems that are commonly thought to be indicative of SLE are not very specific to SLE. Therefore, the condition typically goes. Should I stop for a second? Therefore, the condition typically goes unnoticed till the child starts failing in academics. And the impact is that as the child is growing, the brain also becomes less and less plastic, and it becomes less amenable for any kind of intervention. Not to say that we cannot intervene, but with the growing age, the learning styles will become little solid, and the child also would have developed his or her own compensated strategies. Then intervention will become little problematic. And then because of this peculiarity, sometimes the crucial sensitive period for intervention also could be lost. As the previous speaker has said, Professor Narayan, and also we are aware that SLE is an exclusionary diagnosis, that to identify this condition, we need to rule out that the child does not have intellectual disability or gross neurological deficits or uncorrected visual or auditory problem, and most important, emotional disturbances such as anxiety, stress, etc. But at the same time, somewhat counterintuitively, this condition has also been recognized to coexist with co-occurring conditions, meaning that even if a child has primarily intellectual disability or maybe specific neurological conditions such as neurodevelopmental conditions such as ASD or ADHD, and even emotional disturbances such as anxiety and stress, even the impact could be seen on the occupation, and primarily that could be evident through academics and scholastic performance. And then, since scholastic skills is not a function of biological maturation, unlike other things like as we grow up, we learn to walk and talk, etc., But the reading and writing and arithmetic put together, the learning abilities are something, they are not purely dependent on biological maturation. They have to be taught and learned. Therefore, a host of psychosocial factors can come into play here. What are they? That metacognitive skills, how a child is able to utilize his own cognitive functioning to regulate, understand, and mediate the entire process of thought to come out with an appropriate action and behavior. And also motivation, sufficient motivation to identify the issues and then come out with appropriate strategies, learning styles, and poverty, that Indian studies very clearly indicate that among the children identified to have SLE, nearly 40% of them will come from low socioeconomic status or extreme poverty. And social attitude, that sometimes SLE is an alien phenomena, that it doesn't exist. Even if it exists, sometimes it could be a rich child syndrome, that perhaps parents or the school is trying to manipulate what the child could have otherwise put in effort and overcome the problem. So societal attitude sometimes, and school related and quality of instructions and the curriculum load also can play significant role. This data is coming from the Indian studies. Then what are the developmental significance of learning problems as such? That why we need to give so much importance to that. Child's psychosocial development, particularly during the age of 6 to 13 years, will be heavily influenced by academic excellence and learning, in which the approval of the teachers, peer group, and school, and also the significant others such as parents, family members, siblings also will play an important role. That means when we equate the child with academic abilities or scholastic achievement, we can understand the kind of enormous stress that could be placed on the individual. And lack of positive experiences with academics can dent, therefore, the self-esteem, self-identity, which in turn can affect future developmental competence and quality of life. And these are from the theories from our education psychology background, we can correlate to that. And from again Indian concept, that Indian context, we have strong evidence to say that emotional impact also is quite inevitable consequence of SLE. More than 50% of the children with SLE can have co-occurring psychological conditions, such as ADD, ADHD is primary condition that we see, and also sometimes because of the negative feedback or sense of responsibility, like children are made to sometimes given to understand that this is a problem that you can overcome, and if we do not exercise appropriate caution, that entire responsibility will be placed on the child. And then in order to overcome that, some children will try to fix things diligently, which in turn can manifest as obsessive compulsive disorder in some cases. Therefore we see sometimes children, though the answer is correct, they go on rubbing, correcting, overwriting, they want to try out various answers. These are how sometimes anxiety disorders also can manifest. And even if not as full-fledged disorder, social, behavioral, and emotional symptoms are very common, which can further affect learning disabilities, such as low self-esteem, poor self-perception, and perceived peer relationship, how people are alienating them, or maybe ridiculing, not extending appropriate support, perceived social competency, that it is learning disabilities are there, means that there are no other abilities are there. That's how the child is made to understand. So therefore, lack or having the capacity in the learning domain is equated with the capacity in other areas. And context for traumatic experience. So in the context of SLD, how a child can encounter negative experiences, it can start right from the beginning of performing, that the meaning given to the learning impairment, like what are we telling or sharing to the child? Is it a neurological condition? Is it a disability? Or is it a kind of psychiatric condition? What exactly, and what kind of connotations that we are attaching as significant others? And so even the academic failure, sometimes the child is at fault. This is what we make them understand. And then sometimes it can also lead to inevitable labeling of the child as dull or slow learner, not good for anything, or maybe not fit for academics. Various labels will come at a very late terminology. But even at the technical level, that very term such as disorder, disability also could be quite taxing for the child emotionally. Therefore, disabling, the condition is disabling, therefore the future is also doomed, because all our occupation, future quality of living, independent life is heavily dependent on academic excellence. Therefore, learning disability means lack of bright future. Then this all can create enormous emotional impact on the child. The very diagnostic process, somewhat paradoxically, And the very process of accessing supports also can create a lot of frustration in the individual child as well as the family, like having to revisit certain painful realities as part of the help seeking process, and the guilt for situation of the parents. We also sometimes come across the children crying and worried that because of them that the family has to undergo this entire process, and anxiety about uncertainty. And lastly, the reductionistic approach to supporting SLD, that sometimes we'll be debating whether it's educational or psychosocial and medical, but why not everything together as holistic? In this context, intervention approaches have to be multidisciplinary in nature, holistic but not compartmentalized, wherein the medical, therapeutic, educational, psychosocial services are made available not just as one point measure, but all crucial junctures of the development of the individual. And conducive school and home environment that includes child-friendly school policies, attitudes of teachers, peers, and others, supportive family environment. And the pitfalls could be sometimes parents and the school also can be on the overdrive that, because we need to help, sometimes we also unwittingly tax the child. So that needs to be moderated. And communication, which communicates due regard and respect to the child, irrespective of the condition, and need-based individualized work that encompasses an understanding of the condition, thorough knowledge and creating awareness, making the child part of the decision-making process right from the beginning, and psychological educational support for skill building and developing compensatory skills. In conclusion, SLD is an invisible condition because it doesn't have specific physical manifestation, which itself can impact the decision making and access in appropriate support. SLD is also associated with psychological disorders, and if not disorder, symptoms, which we cannot ignore. There are several contexts in which individuals and families can experience setbacks, stigma, and alienation in making sense of the condition and accessing support. At least, if not the condition, we can reduce this, which are modifiable. And intervention should go beyond academic support and include psychological and social support at every developmental stage that is relevant to a child with SLD. These are some of the important references that I have come across. And then once again, thank you all for this wonderful opportunity to make my presentation. Hello.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Madam.
Thank you, Dr. Kishore, for your very nice presentation to all of us. You are the one who has taken up the personality component of such children into the situation. From the very morning, we are listening to different presentations where each of the speakers, each of the experts have highlighted the point of inclusion for all these children. And you have spoken of just not including them into the academic situation, but also to include them within your interpersonal context, in the social situation, in the emotional interactions that take place in our general situations of life. If we try to include them there, the basic guilt feeling that they suffer, that our parents are suffering because of us, and this is their existential feature. They are born like that, and we all try to help them to come out with their deficiencies. But since people are not readily acceptable to this situation, the realistic acceptance of this fact in order to act properly for them has been highlighted by all of you, particularly in your paper. I could feel the touch of that area. So very well integrated paper, very well integrated presentation of both of you. We are taking back the experience of having your experiences in a summarized version. Some points, if we can keep in our mind and practice in our daily life, whether we are directly dealing with dyslexic clients or not, but in social situations, we are coming across them. If certain points which we have picked up from the morning, if we keep those things in our mind and improve on our general acceptance towards them, the compassionate orientation of each and everybody around them would make their life little more happy. So with this, I think if there is any relevant question from anybody within a very short time, you can place it, and both the speakers are ready to give the answers to your query. Is there any question regarding Dr. Jayanti Narayan and Dr. Thomas Kishore? Please come up.
Hello. Is there any questions? I cannot see. I think they're all satisfied and saying thank you for the wonderful session.
Yeah. So both of them were so self-explanatory in their presentation that people are trying to absorb the knowledge within themselves. Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Debushree Banerjee and Dr. Arundhati Sarkar for including me as one of the participants in your very delightful seminar. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to have all of you as plenary speakers. Now, as I pass on to the next the session, which is on educational psychology, and this session has invited speakers. The chair of the session is Professor Shuvra Chandar, who is a psychologist, psychoanalyst, cognitive behavior therapist practicing for the last 35 years. Ex-lecturer of Indian Psychoanalytical Society, founding secretary of Psychologists Association of West Bengal. She has her own clinic, Bodhodaya Mental Health Care, and is associated with Bellevue Clinic. And she has many national and international publications in these journals. Now I hand over the presentation role to Professor Chandra.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, Professor Chandra, you are audible. Please switch on your video.
I've switched it on.
Host, please see what's the problem, Mr. Shaha.
Maybe bandwidth is okay. I'm visible now.
Just give me a minute. Am I now visible?
Yeah, ma'am, please set in position. So,
okay. Is it now okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Do I start the session then? Yeah. So before I start the session, first let me congratulate everyone of Manochetna and Department of Education, Calcutta University, for organizing this wonderful international webinar, despite the difficult times that we are going through. It's a very well organized and informative program that we are having. And I also thank Dr. Arundhati Sarkar and Dr. Dept Banerjee for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this seminar. So, since we are overshooting our time, without much ado, I would start with the program with this session. However, at the outset, I would like to make this clear that there were actually two speakers because you will be finding it in your brochures. However, because of the current situation, the second speaker had to rush because she is having some kind of emergency. So we would move on to the lecture by Ms. Saloni Priya, whom I would like to introduce. She is the founder of Umid Counseling and Consulting Services, has been working for 23 years as leading counseling psychologist, therapist, coach, parenting expert, life skills and HR trainer, education consultant, recipient of prestigious awards like Rotary Women Entrepreneur, Lions Best Education Project 2012 and 2018, Stree Divas Award, and Business Connect Leadership Award. So I welcome Ms. Priya she is very well known here, I think. So she needed no introduction. However, the mic is all yours. Please continue with your lecture.
Thank you, Shuvra. Thank you so much. Very, very enriching morning since 10:45. Plethora of ideas shared, and I am sure Arundhati ma'am and all the dignitaries from Calcutta University, it is a city of joy which has today created more joy for a very large section of society. And that is where I think Thomas sir had made a very, very comprehensive presentation which connects to my area of work with educational institutions, that how do we create, because right from corporates to working with schools, training management graduates and doing workshops for organizations and NGOs, I always feel that diversity and inclusion are everyday life opportunities. And that is where kindly allow me to share a very short presentation with all of you, which I am sure all the thought leaders here will be able to take it forward. You touch lives, you empower people, and you enable people to reach out. And that is why I feel, listening to everybody since morning, right from Professor Roth to Jayanti ma'am, there was so much for each one of us to take back in our respective organization. If we want the world to be a better place, we have to understand that the essence lies in inclusion. And what is inclusion and diversity to me as a psychologist and an education consultant? It is basically referring to the uniqueness and celebrating differences of people. Don't we need it at every walk of life? And right from a family to an organization, I wish all educational institution stakeholders could start taking diversity and inclusion much more categorically. And that is why I would advocate that let us take management, school owners. I do get to meet a lot of people who are today wanting to open more educational institutions. The vista is much, much larger. Arundhati ma'am, so many of us, haven't we seen in the last 20 years what has happened in education did not happen in the last 70 years. And that is why I think the time is very right that every school has to build a culture of inclusion and diversity. And it starts from the teachers and management demonstrating diversity, including people right from recruitments to appraisal. And there has to be, Arundhati ma'am, a continuous advocacy of this cause. Thank you for initiating it at such a fantastic international seminar. But before we bring it to children and we ensure safe schools for children, I think stakeholders have to understand that we practice diversity, right from a circular to a diary to a school website. We don't have to make these children special. We have to realize it makes us special when we have all these children learning together. I think it does more when all the children who think they are normal are able to see the versatility, the effort, the resilience which a whole lot of such families and children have taught me when I have worked with them. And I stand here that let us start working from the inception, because diversity should be taught as a life skill. Look at the HR manuals of the top companies of the world. Everywhere people are talking about a working place and a working environment which is inclusive and diverse. So whether we talk age, gender, socioeconomic status, culture, religion, disabilities, sexual orientation, the spectrum is very large. And the most important thing to start here with is that if I really look at education, psychology brings in the understanding of what exactly education was all about. Unfortunately, most people have started looking today at education from a very limited view of a source of livelihood. It's not that. It is living life with dignity. It is having a contribution to the socio-cultural climate. And that is why some of the initiatives which Umeed, my organization, does with schools is right from a classroom sitting arrangement, creating multidisciplinary teams in schools where special educators, counselors, therapists, everybody is included in school, not for a problem, but for building a culture. Sports and co-curriculars, why can't we have people included in for sports and co-curriculars teaching with a certain amount of personal challenges where they become role models to the children there? This has been, Arundhati ma'am, a very successful experiment which I have done with many Lions International projects. And it has been an amazing experiment to teaching children diversity and inclusion, and also to the teachers, where in an annual staff meeting, people did share that what a difference it made to my whole attitude and approach, what I thought. And today when I experienced somebody sitting next to me, I felt very humbled and small. So gender education for children, gender sensitivity programs are very important today when children are having so much of influx of information. And a child today watches Friends and watches a Netflix serial more often than maybe what he watches the Indian television serials. So the world has become a very larger platform, and rather than these being areas to be discussed only in a debate, these are areas and issues to be practiced every day. So we do make a lot of schools have programs based on this. I encourage a lot of children in the middle and senior school to teach these as projects. And today, as in a webinar, we are all connected. So boundaries have really, I would say, evaporated. It is just a mindset. You reach out and everybody is there. So to me, more and more schools can actually be building a possibility of creating a whole climate. Because what were schools? Schools were supposed to be preparatory grounds for life and society. And that is why Thomas sir echoed what I wanted to say so beautifully, that the social quotient and the emotional quotient of inclusion needs more emphasis. We are a society which is very, very hell-bent on recognizing high IQ. But if we would have more and more nurturing of emotional quotients, emotional skills, we are a country which has a very rich base of spirituality. Today, the whole world is talking about yoga and mental wellness. In the last 2 months, every mental well-being and mental health webinar I have been, people are talking about taking the reserves of your spirituality to cope, adapt, and change. So we have to have a happier society. The HQ can only be higher. Let's make educational institutions a role model, an experiment which I would be very happy if more and more school heads would come forward. We can create an absolutely inclusive climate where children would learn it as a life skill, teachers would practice it as a way of life, and management would say that we have created global citizens for tomorrow with empathy and the right minds. I am sure that today in these tough times, listening to Ratan Tata when he says that let's not talk profits, let's talk surviving and thriving and being for each other, it warms each and every one of us. And that is why, friends, this is what I look at. Can inclusion and diversity, learning with various kinds of tools. Look at Trinity, what a wonderful way they have created a game which can make people play and get themselves educated. I have very similar examples of people opening their eyes. Let's not look at it as charity. Let us not look at us that we are helping some children who need help. I wish we can take it from an entirely different perspective. We are enabling and empowering ourselves and our society when we become more inclusive. And I look at it, then schools can set in motion a social transformation, set in lifelong learning, bring in change, adapt to new systems. We need to innovate. There can be some complex decision making, and that's where we have been helping a lot of educational institutions. In the last 2 years, Umeed has empowered and trained a certificate course on empathy, listening, and behavioral management, where we have included children from all parts of the school, all age groups, and all kinds of social issues. And it is very heartening that today Bhopal, a whole lot of schools in MP, Jharkhand, Bihar, a lot of Northeast schools, they have started practicing these. Because whether it was school issues of bullying, name calling, whether it was isolating children, whether it was marginalizing, we could address all of them. And what we created these training programs is appreciating differences. And the tagline we took at Umeed was creating possibilities. Difference does not mean we are in disagreement. Difference can be celebrated. So that's what I would advocate from today's platform, that all the educators who are here, all the change and stakeholders here, let us today pledge that we are going to create more and more organizations, more and more platforms, more and more people, because there is no dearth of people who are doing good work, people who have passion, people who have dedicated themselves to advocacy. What we need is more functional getting together and putting in these with so many teachers, so many heads available who could make schools as a change agents for bringing in a more diverse and inclusive society. So with that, my greetings and good wishes and regards to all the wonderful speakers. It has been an enlightening morning, and I think I speak for 200 plus people who have been here till now, till the last speaker is speaking. Over to you, Shubhra ma'am, and over to you, Arundhati ma'am. I am glad to be on this platform, and I am sure we will have many more interactions to take this forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Priya, for this wonderful presentation. And especially, I think I'm going to go back, I'm going to stay back, rather home, with two very important points. That is, creating a culture of diversity, acceptance, awareness in schools, and teaching diversity as a life skill. Very important. And another very important thing is celebrating diversity and difference. Instead of thinking of it as a stigma or as a shortcoming, if we accept it and include it, that okay, people are different, can be different, but let us celebrate the difference. So if that can be taught, I think not only to, sorry, I know Arundhati knows that I have this objection about using the term disabled, but coming on this platform with disabled people, teaching them, but teaching non-disabled individuals. That is very, very important, which I think Mrs. Sahani had emphasized in the morning. So with that, I congratulate you for this wonderful presentation. And if there are any questions, we would be ready to take on one or two questions. Please post your questions here. Maybe we will be able to take on. Although we are running late, but still maybe.
Thank you, Shubhra. I think this is the need of the hour. We need more and more people to take diversity and inclusion as a life skill, practicing it every day and every moment.
Thank you, Shalini. But just give maybe 10 seconds if there are any questions, and then I hand over to the organizing. No, there are no questions, I think. So we end the session here, and I hand over to the organizing secretaries, Dr. Arundhati Sarkar and Professor Devashree Banerjee. Thank you. And we meet tomorrow again.
Yes, we look forward to meet again tomorrow. Thank you, Professor Chandar, Shubhra Chandar, R. Shubhradi, and thank you, Saloni ma'am. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. In fact, from the morning, it's been a plethora of luminaries giving us, enlightening us. It was a wonderful morning. I personally took down notes, and it was a wonderful learning session for me. And I think there are less questions because if you can see the inbox, they are constantly praising it, praising the sessions. They are absolutely enamored. We are thankful to all of you, and thank you so much for sparing the time to be with us in these extraordinary times, braving the odds. Thank you so much. Thank you. I think with that, we bring an end to this day's sessions. Professor Banerjee, can you put in 1 or 2 words, please? Professor Banerjee? Hello? Is Professor Banerjee? She had difficulty with her internet. So I think we will have to close today. Just give me 1 second, please. Let me see if she's able to come. Yes, she's joined. Host, please see what is the matter with Professor Banerjee. Mr. Shah?
Madam, can you hear me, Devashree madam?
Can you put her on?
phone.
Please bear with us. Devashree madam, she will end the day session, and we will again meet tomorrow.
I tell her.
Tomorrow is the day for the presenters, and we start early.
Okay, Devashree, please. Bolo.
Okay. Please end the day session, Professor Banerjee.
Very bad connectivity problem. I'm calling to phone. I'd like to thank all of you for sparing your time over here. A special thanks to Dr. Arundhati Sarkar, who has been over enthusiastic, and we are really happy, and looking at the comments in the chat box has really inspired us all the more. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you on behalf of my department and university. Thank you
so much. Thank you to all of you. Thank you. We look forward to meeting all our chairpersons tomorrow and the paper readers, and also to the participants. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So end Kochi, madam.
We are ending now. Thank you, Mr. Shah. You can end it today. Thank you to all of you. Thank you once again. Look forward to meeting you tomorrow. Thank you, Professor.